Off the rails, another day of strike action will affect train services across much of the country today.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Saturday the 25th of January. This is Breakfast on GBNews with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the UK on your TV, your radio and online, so wherever you are, whatever you're up to, you can take us out and about with you, as long as you're not trying to get on a train today. These are the headlines.
Well, today, members of the RMT union staged their third 24-hour strike this week in a dispute over jobs, pay and working conditions. It means that only a fifth of rail services will run, so please check before you travel. We're asking you today whether you think the country has still coped despite the strikes.
The Prime Minister has met Prince Charles in Rwanda. Boris Johnson said they had a good old chinwag after the Prince of Wales reportedly criticised his asylum policy to send refugees to the country.
In the United States, the constitutional right to abortion has been scrapped. Protections that have been in place for nearly 50 years were overturned in the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. It now means individual states can ban abortion outright, and the decision has seen widespread condemnation as well as applause.
So there's actually quite a lot of meaty stuff to talk about
There's a lot of news today. Still, it goes on.
So whatever your thoughts, whatever your views, we would love to hear from you, and we will be going through those in detail throughout the course of the programme today. GBViews at GBNews is the address. .uk, I should say.
Yes, remember
.uk. GBViews at gbnews.uk is the address you need.
Well, there. Are we off the rails in Britain? Are you planning to catch a train today?
Well, you may think again, because Britain faces its third rail strike within a week. It means only about 20% of services are going to run today.
Yeah, members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union, that's the RMT, will be on the picket lines in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions.
Of course, it's not just the strike from the RMT. Other unions are following suit, including ASLEF, which will affect services in South London and Hull. Last night, the Transport Secretary said that rail strikes are less effective because commuters can now work from home.
He said, while their action is hitting some people at the worst possible time, this week has also shown that overall rail strikes are not as effective a tool for the unions as they once were. Well, what do you think? Do you agree with what Grant Shapps said there or not?
It's an interesting point. Let's talk to former RMT Assistant General Secretary Steve Headley, who's here in the studio. Good to see you this morning. Do you think these strikes have been effective? Have they made any progress to the RMT?
Well, the strikes have been very effective. I think even the news from the railway companies is that at the best of times are running about 20% of the service. And of course, not everybody's on strike. Some of the train operating companies are not on strike. I think progress is very difficult because really the management in Network Rail and the train operating companies have been shackled by SAPs and the governments. They're not allowing them to negotiate. Now, we've asked for a very reasonable, I think too reasonable, my own opinion, pay deal of 7%. Inflation is 9.1, predicted to be 11 at the end of the year. And over the last 3 years, railway workers have lost about 20%, about a fifth of their wages. But the government are insisting that if this any deal is to be done, any percentage is even to be discussed, then they're talking about compulsory redundancies and tearing up terms and conditions, which would mean people working a lot more nights and a lot more weekends for no recompense.
But in terms of those compulsory redundancies, wasn't there nearly a deal done yesterday on that? I mean, there's all this talk saying you were so close to coming to some sort of agreement, and then the unions walked away again.
Well, it's quite simple. If they want the deal on no compulsory redundancies, write down on a piece of paper there will be no compulsory redundancies. Not any aspirations to do things or good wishes to do things. You know, I intended last week to go out jogging. I never actually made it. I had the best intentions. I had every will in the world to go jogging. Never actually made it. So we need a cast iron guarantee about no compulsory redundancies, not the best wishes to make it, because that's a caveat you can get out of.
Why won't they give you a cast iron? Why wouldn't they write it down?
Well, I mean, you know what?
You must have asked.
This is very difficult.
What did they say?
This is very difficult to understand, right? Because given the demographics in our industry, a lot of people will be applying for voluntary redundancy. So what it tells me is that this is not the last that we're going to hear about redundancies. This is the first tranche, because I think the first tranche would be oversubscribed, if I'm honest, with people who want to go. But why would they keep that compulsory element? Because they've given Network Rail in particular this guarantee, given the workers this guarantee for 12 years in a row, that there would be no compulsory redundancies.
So you're saying they would get enough voluntary redundancies?
For this time around, I think they would. I can't guarantee that.
Is there any reason why there are a lot of voluntary redundancies potentially?
The demographics in the industry, people are in their late 50s, early 60s. A lot of people have had
what
enough.
They might call natural wastage, as it were.
Well, yes, but the problem is, if it was natural wastage, that would be one thing. But what they're talking about is that natural wastage would be not replacing people who left.
Yeah.
Compulsory redundancies is a completely different thing, where they say, right, thanks very much for your 30 years service. Here's your cards. Go and find yourself another job. So that's the line in the sand for the trade union. We're quite happy to discuss severance schemes. We're quite happy to discuss natural wastage. But there has to be that guarantee that there's going to be no compulsory redundancies.
If that's the line in the sand, have you reached an agreement on some sort of pay increase? I mean, I know that the RMT wanted 7%. Clearly, there's got to be room for negotiation on that if that's the figure you've gone in for.
Well, this is really strange, and I don't really understand why the RMT did go in for 7%. Rail workers have lost 20% in the past 3 years.
But as has everybody else.
Indeed, so there should be a national strike, really, of people who are not going to get recompensed, all those key workers during COVID who didn't actually saw their wages plummeted, or using food banks or claiming benefits. So I'm a bit puzzled why RMT negotiators did go in at 7%, because if that's your
You think it was too low?
I think it's too low, because if you've lost 20% and you get 7%, then you've negotiated yourself a 13% wage cut. That's a reality in real terms. So I'm surprised, because I've been negotiating for years, and even if you're going to settle for 7%, it's like selling a house. You don't
always start higher.
Yeah.
What would you say, and I'm paraphrasing because it was I think it was yesterday, we got an email through from one of our viewers, so I can't remember exactly how they phrased it, but it was on the lines of, we've had the country's in crisis, the rail industry has been bailed out over the last couple of years, and a lot of people in the RMT won't have been working the same way they've been, to phrase them, I remember they said, sat on their backsides for 2 years.
True. It's just not true.
If they think you can continue in the industry with a pay rise and no compulsory redundancies, you're all talking yourself out of business.
Well, first of all, the rail industry did get about 20 billion, I think, and 2 billion of that went straight to shareholders who were sat at home doing nothing. Most railway workers were not furloughed. There was a service running right through the pandemic, and the vast majority of railway workers, frontline staff at least, didn't have the option of working from home. They were working and sometimes catching COVID, sometimes dying from COVID, like the bus workers were. And these are the people that haven't been recompensed whatsoever. Now, they're absolutely furious that they've had a pay freeze. And what's even more incendiary is that the shareholders sat at home and the bosses getting their huge bonuses and, their £500,000 paychecks in some respects, have had a pay rise. They have been recompensed, and they've done nothing during the pandemic. So that's why people are absolutely furious.
What do you think of what Grant Shapps was saying about the efficiency, the efficacy of strikes at the moment? We in the news business, we're expecting a week of total and utter chaos, jams on the motorways, or things like that. It didn't happen because people were choosing to work from home. Now, I don't know how long they can go on doing that, but doesn't that suggest that maybe a rail strike is an old-fashioned thing that simply won't work in the modern age?
Well, I think key workers certainly can't work from home, and people who actually keep the country running can't work from home. I mean, nobody really misses a politician or a councillor or, one of the other do-gooders who sit at home on their computers. No one misses them. But the reality is the country has been massively disrupted by the rail strike. And, no one wants that. No one wants to lose 3 days' money when their wages are being cut by 20%, really, in real terms anyway. No one wants to do that. But the reality is that it has been effective. If it wasn't so effective, why are they out there shouting that they've lost £1 billion in revenue, that the hospitality industry's been heavily hit. Why are they shouting that? I mean, I have to say that they've told us that the railway workers are worth over £1 billion a week. So if they put that sum up, that would solve the dispute, wouldn't it?
Well, that isn't going to happen, is it? Let's be honest. Look, are these strikes likely to continue, do you think? Because, I mean, unless you come to some agreement, or the RMT comes to some agreement pretty quickly, what happens next?
Well, I really hope that the RMT negotiators are going to hold out for a deal that the members deserve. I hope we're not going to have some rotten compromise that's going to would have the fig leaf of no compulsory redundancies. You know, a measly 5% with maybe no compulsory redundancies. I think that the members won't accept that anyway. I think that the membership deserve and need a pay rise. And I think that they'll fight long and hard until they get the pay rise that they deserve, and no compulsory redundancies, and preserving their work-life balance.
OK. Steve Headley, former RMT Assistant General Secretary. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for coming in. Yes, indeed.
Well, what
Do let us know what you think,
Mm.
absolutely. And are you working from home today when normally you might be going in to your job? It's a Saturday. Perhaps you were thinking of coming into London, popping into the city anywhere, going shopping.
Well, I mean, what we've seen post-pandemic is, and it's called when there's been work on the tracks, this has been a problem, hasn't it? That we've seen that actually the railways tend to be busier now on days, sort of days off, if you like, rather than the work days, because there are fewer people commuting in. So perhaps this is going to be the big day of disruption.
Absolutely. So let us know what your views are on that, and if you're changing your plans today because of the rail strikes. And where do your sympathies lie? gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, let's bring you up to date with the headlines at 12 minutes past 6. And Boris Johnson's leadership remains under pressure following yesterday's defeat in 2 crunch by-elections. The Times reports that Tory rebels are planning a takeover of the Backbench 1922 committee in a bid to change the rules to allow another vote of confidence.
And if you've just joined us, only a fifth of train services will run today due to another 24-hour strike by thousands of rail workers. Members of the RMT union have walked out for the 3rd time this week in that dispute over jobs, pay and conditions.
Protests have taken place in the UK after the US Supreme Court ended the constitutional right to abortion in the United States. Events were held outside the American Embassy in London and the US Consulate in Edinburgh, with protesters holding signs reading "Our bodies, our choice." Meanwhile, at Glastonbury, the singer Billie Eilish described it as a dark day for women during her headline set on the Pyramid stage.
UK house prices are continuing to rise, with the typical home now costing more than 7 times average earnings. Research by the mortgage lender Halifax found that since the start of the pandemic, house prices have risen by 16.8%, whilst earnings have only risen by 2.7%. London is the most expensive place to buy a home, of course, I suppose, with an average property price of over £530,000.
You do wonder how you're meant to buy a house.
When the average house is over £500,000.
But I remember even when I got my first mortgage, which was back in the late 90s, I guess, and even then it was your mortgage, you could get 3.5 times your income.
Yes.
So if now the average house is 7 times your income,
Yeah, then what
are your options?
Yeah.
A 50% deposit?
Exactly. It's crippling, really, trying to find a deposit. That's where the bank of mum and dad tends to come in, and I'm getting a bit of pressure from that concern. Yes, exactly.
Of course, in the current situation, mum and dad often haven't got any money to help out anyway.
Exactly, yeah. Which is why you get a lot of these schemes happening now that they help to buy, but also the, equity release, which a lot of older people are sort of being dangled as a possibility. You know, you could equity release on your house, which hopefully you own by now, in order to have a holiday or help out with your children's deposits.
When you look at those, I don't understand how they work, because you have to, in effect, take out a mortgage. You take like a second mortgage on your house.
But you never pay it until the house is either sold or you die. Yes, it takes a lot of explaining, I think.
Very
but it's that people are trying to find ways to help their children get deposits for houses that are so expensive. You wonder how on earth youngsters are ever going to get onto the housing ladder.
No, no. Look, let's turn our attention to the United States, where the Supreme Court there has voted to overturn the constitutional right for an abortion. The ruling ends nearly 50 years of legal protection for terminations in America.
Yeah, the power to decide on abortion rights for tens of millions of women will now be handed to the 50 states to determine individually. Speaking yesterday, the US President Joe Biden condemned the decision, saying it automatically puts women at risk.
Roe gone. Let's be very clear. The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. State laws banning abortion are automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women, some without exceptions. So extreme that women could be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls were forced to bear their rapist's child.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by Sarah Elliott from Republicans Overseas. Good morning.
Good morning.
I imagine that you welcome this overturning of Roe v. Wade?
Yes, I do, and I find it absolutely amazing. It's happened in my lifetime. But I welcome this because it's actually back to democracy. It's putting this issue that was decided by 9 Supreme Court judges back to the people where it should have been decided before. One of the reasons why this issue is so hotly contested in the United States is that it wasn't decided by the people through the democratic process of the legislatures. And now it will be. And it will go to the states where those states will be able to reflect the will and the views of the people who live there. And, you know, for 50 years, there's absolutely been no way that states can restrict abortion. So actually our abortion legislation is quite radical in the United States. You know, Kamala Harris, our vice president, you know, believes you can have one up to 38 weeks. You know, places like California, New York, and Virginia were saying that if a baby survives an abortion, we can deny it care. So these are all things that are quite out of step with mainstream Americans. And what you're going to find is actually America's going to look a lot more like Britain and Europe on abortion.
In what way?
You can have an abortion on demand.
I'm sorry?
In Britain, you can have an abortion on demand.
Up to 24 weeks.
Yes.
You can go full term.
This ruling isn't about 24 weeks. This ruling is basically saying that in some states there will be no abortion.
That's because those people believe life begins at conception or after a heartbeat. I mean, for me, as a pro-life woman, I find that this protects life from the beginning of conception because I believe it's still a human being when a unique genetic code is formed. And these are defenseless, vulnerable, voiceless humans in the womb that can't defend themselves.
In some cases, so are the mothers, defenseless,
yes.
voiceless, and human.
Well, and I believe that actually abortion is not actually good for women. There are a lot of side effects to abortion that are not discussed. You know, depression, drug abuse that follows, you know, such a procedure. I mean, it's actually, I think that this is a great argument for the community to come and support the woman in her decision. And everyone should have a chance at life.
She doesn't have a decision, though, does she? You say support the woman in her decision, but in many cases she won't have the decision. She'll have to go ahead with the pregnancy, whether she likes it or not.
Or she can go to another state, because guess what?
If she's got the money to go to another state, if she's got the freedom to travel, if she's a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old girl who's suddenly found herself pregnant by accident or maybe even by rape, she's not going to be free to be able to travel, to move, to take the time off.
Well, of the 63 million abortions of the last 50 years, about 0.5% are incest or rape. This has been used over the last 50 years as a form of contraception.
Oh,
which
please.
A lot of
Are you
people,
honestly suggesting some women see it as a form of contraception?
Absolutely.
Are you honestly saying to me that some women take this decision to have an abortion sort of glibly?
I think it runs the spectrum, but there are people who do it multiple times for that very reason. They absolutely have confessed it. You look at the pro-choice supporters out there, they are proud of it. Let me tell you, this is a moral issue.
Some are.
Yeah, and it is and you know what this does actually is it starts the conversation is when does human life begin? And this is a serious decision. And actually the women's lives are extremely important. This is not anti-woman. This is pro-woman. This is talking about how can we help women have protections. This is, and also, you know, most Americans, 13% of women actually, don't want to have, don't agree with third-term abortions, right? So actually, 2 out of 3 Americans actually want restrictions on abortion after 20 weeks. So you're just going to see, actually, Americans' laws reflect that of Europe.
You're the man here. Do you want to say anything?
Well, I was just looking at some of the figures because I'm aware, and I do think as a man and as someone who is not a father, it becomes very difficult to get involved in what ultimately becomes a sort of pro-life and pro-woman argument in that sense. But looking at the figures, in 2019, approximately 19% of US pregnancies, excluding spontaneous miscarriages, ended in abortion. I mean, that's a very high figure.
Yeah.
It's a very high figure. I'm surprised at that.
Well, I mean, I'm personally not. You know, in New York City, there have been some years where there have been more abortions in the African-American community than births. And I think that should make us all pause and think, what is going on? Is this right? Is this healthy? And listen, you're going to say 13 states at the moment have passed trigger laws, so which in the next 30 days, they will ban abortions. But you're going to see places like California and Colorado where you'll be able to do it all the way up to birth. So, and then there'll be places where they say if you hear a heartbeat, you can't have one, which actually, with the development of technology, and coupled with the extreme position of the left in America on this issue, they are changing the dialogue. The conversation is changing.
I mean, clearly it's always good to have the conversation, but the conversation's always been there in the States, hasn't it? Abortion has always been an incredibly contentious issue.
And I think it's because you had 9 Supreme Court judges decide this for the entire country.
Yeah, but we've just had 9 We've just had 6 Supreme Court
who's
judges
actually
decided
putting it back to the states to say, you decide. We're a massive country of over 360 million people. People's, race, religion, and creed just run the spectrum. And you know what? Different regions of the country feel differently.
Can I just ask that? In the explanation for the ruling, the Supreme Court judges almost sort of pointed the finger at what next? Contraception?
Oh, I'm
gay
sorry.
marriage?
No.
Gay sex?
No. And you know what?
Well, they did, didn't they?
Well,
They actually pointed the finger at those sort of
This is a left-wing talking point. I'm very sorry, but this is a left-wing talking point. Honest to goodness, the pro-life movement just cares about protecting life from the very beginning. This is about where human life begins. This is a human rights issue. It's a civil rights issue. We in the pro-life movement equate this to slavery. We want to see this overturned. We think it's unjust. And we want to support the woman, too. I mean, I'm a woman. I don't want to see women suffer. And there have been tons of suffering from this whole issue. And now we can take a step back. I think the heat kind of goes down a bit. We go down into the subsidiarity, into our federal system, and let it play out there. This will fundamentally change the political landscape of America because of coalitions, because of our party politics, because of fundraising, all of the above. You're going to see new coalitions form on the right, new coalitions form on the left. And it needs to be said that the head of the Democratic National Committee made it very clear that they were not a pro-life party, that pro-lifers were not welcome in the Democratic Party. So now what is it, how does that change their messaging going forward? How does that change their donor base? And what is their strategy, in terms of political action? So, and it is a win for conservatives who have been fighting this issue, making it a voting issue since Ronald Reagan's election in 1980.
Can I ask one more question that I know that a lot of our viewers will probably be texting in? How can the Republican Party be both pro-life and pro-guns?
Well, do you know what? It makes sense to me because they defend life. We don't see the gun as an aggressive tool. We see it as protection. But the gun is the biggest killer of people in the United States. Actually, opioid or heart attack, I think. But the thing is that I'm anti-mass shooting, I'm anti-violence, but I'm pro-life. But I believe that guns actually defend life. And being pro-life, I'm defending life. I don't see the gun as something to be an aggressor. I support the right to bear arms because I believe in defending my self-defense, protecting my property and myself. So in that way, that's the logic. And but, you know, again, this is going to change the voting patterns for many peoples, because this issue was the #1 voting issue that they would either go to the left or the right on.
OK.
Well, leave it there. Could actually discuss this with you all day. Thank you very much, though, for coming in. Thank you. Well, do let us know what you think, won't you? gbviews@gbnews.uk.
It's a very, very difficult one. It's a very difficult one. But, yeah, your thoughts would be very welcome on that. I'd be fascinated to see what your consensus is. We've got much more to come for you, including all the fallout from Thursday's by-elections.
Good morning, I'm Helen Roberts with your weather update, and this weekend is looking rather changeable, certainly in comparison with some recent days over the past week or so, and it's all thanks to this area of low pressure, very slow moving, and it's with us right the way through the course of this weekend. Initially introducing this cold front, which will actually bring some better nights if you've been struggling to sleep with the humidity over recent nights, feeling a little bit cooler and fresher than it has done. So for Saturday, we start on quite a bright note, but quickly these rash of showers developing, particularly across western parts of the country. Some of those will be heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. The best chance of seeing drier and brighter weather throughout the day is across East Anglia and the southeast of England. And this is also where we'll tend to get the higher temperatures into the low 20s. So feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine. But it is looking changeable, and there's yet more cloud and rain swinging in from the west through the course of tonight and into the start of Sunday. This will be a band of slightly more persistent rain as we head into the early hours of Sunday morning. As I mentioned, feeling a little bit fresher than it has done over some recent nights, but still not cool by any stretch. So we start Sunday again with some bright spells, particularly across the eastern side of the UK, but quite a lot of cloud already piling up across western areas, and further showers or perhaps longer spells of rain. And again, they could be heavy and possibly thundery at times. Still, the best chance of drier and brighter conditions is across the southeast corner of the UK. And again, temperatures here just about climbing into the low 20s, given that sunshine. And there's really no significant change as we head into the early part of next week, certainly staying on the changeable side with further showers, which will be heavy at times, but occasional bright or sunny spells too.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.29 morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Some interesting views coming in on the by-elections. and the impact on Boris Johnson, and whether he should now go and what Tory rebels are going to do about it.
They're trying to do.
Yeah, Samantha says, whether you support Boris or not, what's the point of rules? That was a confidence vote that Boris Johnson won. If people can just change them because they didn't get the result they wanted.
Well, I think that's politics, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting, though. Sally says, if the Tory rebels can't get the timing of the no-confidence vote right, what makes them think they can run a country?
Yeah, they really did get it wrong, I think, didn't they?
Well, yes.
They have waited until after
They've
these
held up
by-elections.
on their letters.
We were saying it at the time, weren't we?
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been a different result. Maybe not.
Very interesting, because it was a pretty grim result for the government in those two by-elections. The Prime Minister has admitted the results were not brilliant, but vowed to listen and learn.
Some way of putting it, isn't it?
Yeah, but it seems it's not enough for some of the Conservative Party who want to have a change of leadership. Under those 1922 committee rules, then Mr Johnson is safe for a further challenge for another year.
If they can get in there and change the rules, they may be able to do it in time for something like September. I don't know.
Possibly.
Well, joining us in the studio now is Lembit Opik, who's former Lib Dem MP. First of all, your reaction, actually. I mean, a stonking Lib Dem victory in one place, but they didn't even bother to campaign in the other, so it was tactical, wasn't it?
It was tactical. I was pretty sure, I think most of the country was sure that the Tories were going to lose both of those by-elections. What was interesting was the sheer size of the majority in Tiverton and Honiton, a seat which has never been held by the Lib Dems before. Actually, the biggest swing in by-election history. The second point is really interesting. Why did this happen? Was it because they ran great campaigns? Was it tactical voting? Yeah, to an extent. But I actually think it was more a vote against Boris Johnson and maybe the economic situation rather than a vote for the parties.
So the Tories lost rather than the Lib Dems winning?
Yes, though I have to say he's a very strong candidate in the Tiverton-Honiton by-election in particular. I think they really chose a good candidate there. But there's no doubt that the senior people I know in the Conservative Party are blaming Boris Johnson for this. And you've just been talking about the timing of the confidence vote. He's bought himself 12 months. They could try and change the rules, but here's when it gets complicated. You could say, well, that's cheating, like the person who wrote in said. But Boris changed the rules about ministerial honesty. So he can't do that and then expect himself to have a clear run when quite obviously a lot of Tories, maybe a majority of Tories, don't think he should be leading them into the next election.
Well, the idea that there has been some sort of pact, though, a Lib-Lab pact.
Yeah, it's a front page of the Daily Mail.
We haven't talked about that for a decade or two, have we?
40 years.
Javid saying, if there's a pact, be honest enough to tell us about it.
OK, then let's talk about the Lib Dem-Tory pact, which actually formed a government for 5 years.
Yes, but that wasn't... That was different.
Declared.
That was post-voting, wasn't it?
Yes.
So at least it was in the clear.
Hold on a sec. Neither the Tories nor the Lib Dems campaigned for that coalition before the general election in 2010. So you've got to be realistic, and Anne said it. This is politics. And if the Labour Party and the Lib Dems think they can get power by working together, it won't be a formal signed pact, but tactical voting, then they can't force the electorate to go along with it. But the electorate seemed to cooperate this time perfectly well in two by-elections. It's not illegal.
But no, not illegal. It's interesting, though, that in Wakefield, where Labour won, Keir Starmer has then said, well, look at these fantastic results, 12.7% swing away from the Tories and towards us. That's enough to get us a majority government. Well, not if it's down to tactical voting.
I think you're right. Keir Starmer, I have been fairly critical of. I think that if Tony Blair had been in charge, he would have probably dispatched Boris Johnson in February, March. It felt to me that Keir couldn't get the ball to the back of the political net then. And it's not a great result for Keir Starmer. In fact, the Lib Dems clearly had a much more successful result in Honiton and Tiverton-Honiton. The big question is what would happen in a general election? Because the Lib Dems, I can tell you from personal experience, are superb at focusing their resources in a by-election. It's almost their signature dish. You can't do that with 650 constituencies, so things change a little bit, probably a bit more of a swing back. But the two big dynamics here are, will Boris be in charge? I don't think he can recover his position, in which case they'll lose all the red wall. And can Keir Starmer hold it together enough to get the soft Tories, who he needs to win back, in the red wall? And that's not really much to do with the Lib Dems.
You say that if there were a change of leader, they'd lose the red wall. Would they necessarily?
If
Do you
they
think it's
don't
only
change...
down to Boris's personality that they got the red wall seats in the first place?
Yes, I do think that, but it's more complicated. Again, I don't think Boris can win those seats now because people are fed up with him. The Labour Party said, oh, Boris is the kind of bloke I'd like to go for a drink in the pub with. Now they're angry with him. Whether Liz Truss, who I think is a favourite, Penny Mordaunt, maybe Rishi Sunak or Jeremy Hunt can do it, is questionable because he hasn't... none of them are the kind of person you go to the pub with. And that's the thing. That was the anomaly. Boris Johnson...
He's not going to go to the pub with Keir Starmer or Ed Davey, for that matter.
I have done.
Well,
it was OK, but I wouldn't say that I'd have run down to the pub just to do that. The problem we've now got is Boris has broken all the electoral rules. Every other leader would have gone by now. But it's like Donald Trump. It's just Boris.
Hey, Phil says, one of our viewers, morning Phil, Boris is a winner. The media, London-based mostly, haven't got a clue how much respect and trust the Prime Minister has around the country.
And millions of people still feel that way. Millions of people don't care about Partygate. Millions of people aren't actually suffering too much with the cost of living crisis. But it's the people at the margin that make the difference. 10% is all you need to lose the general election. And that's the dangerous path that Boris is following. Whether or not they change the rules, I think they're going to have to change their leader to get a majority.
Yeah. OK, Lembit, good to talk to you. I know we're going to see you in a couple of hours again. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Do stay with us because we've got plenty more to come, including that royal visit to Rwanda.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.38. Morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
So, shall we have a look at today's newspaper front pages? And the Times leads on Boris's increasingly unstable position within the Conservative Party following a series of high-profile election embarrassments.
The Guardian covers the return of Red Wall seat Wakefield to Labour as Tory grandees urge the PM to resign.
The Daily Mail, however, leads on Sajid Javid's pushback against an alleged anti-Tory election pact ratified by the Lib Dems and Labour.
The Eye covers the Supreme Court decision in the United States to overturn Roe v. Wade, making abortion illegal in several US states. It removes the federal protection to allow abortion.
Yeah, and then allows the states to make up their own minds. The Telegraph leads on the news that Tory dissenters are plotting again to remove the Prime Minister.
Let's go through those papers in a bit more detail with Baroness of Buckley, Claire Fox, and CEO of PLMR, Kevin Craig. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Claire, let's start with the Telegraph, should we? And these Tory rebels, these pesky rebels.
Well, yeah, and it depends which rebels you look at. I think that one of the papers has said the Tory grandees, and it's Lord Hague and Lord Howard. And to be honest with you, that's just like yawn. You know, there's no difference there. They're the ones who've wanted him out for quite some time. I think, though, the mood has shifted, and this story, and it's on a number of the front pages, is that the people who were not sure whether they were going to stick with him or not are really going to try and go. I think there's a real problem in the Tory party now. And the way they're going to do it, because the rule says they can't do anything for a year, is to get positions on the 1922 committee, so that they, of which it's got its own internal elections, and that's a backbench committee that makes a lot of decisions about what happens in the Conservative Party. If they can get themselves into positions on that, they might be able to change the rules and therefore get rid of him earlier.
But those elections aren't even till September or something.
No, they aren't. But I think what it indicates is that the significant thing for me that's changed is Oliver Dowden stood down. And he's a big heavyweight, and he didn't overdo it in his letter of resignation, but he basically said, we can't carry on as usual. Somebody's got to take responsibility. It was a real signal, I think.
But what was interesting with that was no domino effect. I mean, we were saying yesterday, are we going to see them fall throughout the course of the morning?
No, but I think it was a signal. Things have got to change, and I think that there will be conversations. No, I mean, Boris Johnson's not going to go unless there's an internal coup in the cabinet, effectively. And there is still this problem that they've got, which is they haven't got a clue about who else to get to do it.
Well, it is alleged in at least one of the newspapers today that Oliver Dowden is going to run Rishi Sunak's election campaign.
I saw that. God, you know, I hang a little bit around Westminster now. I mean, it's like, you know, sixth form gossip column. You know, it's like everyone's like, do you know who's working for so-and-so? Do you know who's working? But the reality is, I mean, I thought, actually, in terms of Tiverton, I thought that they might even scrape through. Talking to people who were there, I thought they might just lose. They were humiliated, right? Wakefield was no surprise in some ways. This is very serious for them. But I also thought that Boris Johnson's response, just final thing to say on this, was actually tone deaf. I mean, people have become fed up about the Partygate stuff, but this is now more of an internal Conservative Party row, which is for him to just say, let me get on with the job, this is personality politics. You do think Boris Johnson, the man who said that his personality is the thing in a way, which is promoted as it's Boris's party, it's Boris's Brexit and all the rest of it, you can't then go treat me like just an ordinary politician and let me get on with my job.
Yeah, Kevin, what's the Guardian's take on this?
Well, the Guardian, you know, and let's be frank, the Guardian is an openly left-of-centre newspaper and wants Johnson out, wants the Conservative Party out. And they are leading very strongly, you know, biggest loss by election ever. Tory grandees tell Johnson to just go. I mean, I think what's interesting is that the Tory party's in a real bind, actually. They're stuck because Johnson was not going to let go of power. And it's going to take some people at the top to be quite courageous because they are heading, whatever your politics, they are heading for oblivion currently. That's not Labour Party bias. You know, the Conservative Party are on course to lose huge numbers of seats. And as Claire says, Boris Johnson's message from Africa was, let me get on with the job, let's not do personality. Mate, that's how you got there in the first place. Different election winner down the pub. And, you know, Stephen, earlier you said a part of Boris's appeal is that people want to go for a drink with him. Well, a lot of people don't. You don't trust him. You won't be left with...
To be fair, Lembit Opik said that, not me.
Well,
as a non-drinker, I can tell you I don't go for a drink with anybody.
Then you said no one wants to go down the pub with Keir Starmer. I can tell you
or Ed Davey.
Well, I can't speak for Ed Davey, but, you know, I think the gloss has come off the old BJ personality. And, you know, they're in a bind. And the newspapers this morning reflect that. You know, even right-wing newspapers like The Telegraph are saying, you know, that things are looking serious for Boris.
But I think when he says, I want to get on with the job, the biggest problem is that there's some uncertainty about what the Conservative Party stand for at the moment. And one of the rows is which bit of the job do you want to get on with, right? And so people will say, well, why has he gone down the net zero route? Just as criticisms of him. Which bit of the job is he emphasising? Are we going to see him delivering why people voted for him? And I simply think that when people believe, a lot of the Red Wall voters thought, yeah, you know, he's going to do the Brexit thing. He's going to really be a different kind of prime minister and all the rest of it. They become disillusioned with that. Then what you're left with is Boris the personality. And as that's become exposed as being a bit dodgy, even dodgier than they thought, I think people just think, well, he's not getting on with the job, though, is he?
To be fair, we've got 2 years or thereabouts till the next election.
Yeah.
If this isn't a big warning flag, nothing is. So there is a possibility, isn't there, that they could become a Conservative government again. They could start cutting taxes. They could do everything that the backbenchers are wanting and do what people in the Red Wall seats are wanting.
And that's entirely feasible. What I'm talking about, because we're talking about the papers, is not even what I think. What I'm saying is, why is it that there's a little bit of shakiness, even amongst the people who've stuck relatively close with him at the moment, within the Conservative Party? And I just think a lot of Tory voters were really fed up, and I understand this, and I don't just mean regular Tory voters, a lot of Red Wall voters, when they felt as though there was almost like a media coup to get him out, or whether there was kind of no doubt. And a lot of GBNews people will be saying, we'll decide whether he's the Prime Minister.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, I just get this, like, feeling that people are beginning to think, actually, you know what I mean, like, we're fed up with him. And I keep seeing people saying, I voted for him in good faith as a Red Wall voter, and now I'm not sure. They're not going back to Starmer,
we get
by the way. They're not voting.
We get inundated with people getting in touch saying, can you just leave off him and let him get on with his job? Don't we?
We do.
Time and again, every morning.
Agreed, but, you know, I was in Wakefield canvassing, and, you know, Claire, where I do agree with Claire, is that it is people who were persuaded by Boris before, who thought, you know, he's something different. They just don't know what he's for. They have real people who've lost faith in his integrity. It's not propaganda.
Yeah, but that's interesting in and of itself, isn't it? If that is true, that it's people aren't voting then for Keir Starmer because they think he's going to be good. They're just not voting for Boris Johnson.
I disagree with that. I mean, that you could argue against.
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, but I don't think they're voting. I mean, one of our crises is a lot of people won't vote. I mean, I do not think. I mean, you cannot underestimate the damage that, just in terms of integrity, that the Labour Party did to itself by selling out the Brexit vote. People won't forgive
I think that's over. The Brexit's done, Claire.
No. The point is not that they talk about Brexit all the time. I'm talking about, you know, if you're going to say Boris Johnson hasn't got any integrity, you've got to remember that from the ordinary people's point of view, that the Labour Party let them down. That's what 2019 was about.
But that's ancient history now. Keir Starmer said we respect what happened.
The sense of betrayal, I don't think is. It's not because they want to talk about Brexit all the time. It doesn't mean that they trust. You're talking about trust in the Tory party. Yeah. I think that trust is broken with a lot of people in Labour.
Yeah, I disagree on that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let us
know what the voters say.
Let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Claire, can we look at single-sex spaces in the Times?
Oh, we can. The Times are going on a story which I suppose we're becoming familiar with this, which is that in Whitehall... Sorry, I haven't got my Times in front of me now. In Whitehall, there's a decision that... here we go. Civil servants told they are free to be gender flexible. And this effectively comes from the Gender Identity and Intersex HR Handbook, providing those who are transgender, non-binary and intersex. And it's for their managers. Now, I think that the reason why this is of some issue is because there's a sense in which the civil service have, what the phrase is, become captured, and that there's a whole range of organisations like Stonewall in there advising on how you can make sure that you're an ally of trans people and so on and so forth. Now, the consequences are that there won't be women's toilets. I mean, that's effectively it, because the privacy and the intimacy of women saying, I just want those toilets to be for women, is compromised by saying that those who say that they are transgender will be able to use the
Why does it matter?
Toilets.
I mean, look, we've talked about this before on the programme. I don't get it. here, as you know, here we
and
just
I
have
hate
we
They're
just have
terrible.
And I hate it too. Can I just
They're
point
terrible
out?
toilets.
I hate it here.
I hate it here.
And so you can say I don't get it. I mean, I think maybe the last time was just very quickly, like for years, decades, women fought for the privacy of, and if you go to a poor country, you always notice, you know, women are having to be involved in their private lives in public. You know, in India, I always remember that. And I remember there was a big fight for toilets and for facilities. It's like when you're in hospital, when you're most vulnerable. Now, you might not get it, and I don't care that you don't get it. I just don't want you in the space with me. That's the deal.
Now that's... But I tell you what, that's a very interesting turn of phrase, though, because the transgender people I know say, when people are quite opposed to what they're fighting for, say, they might not get it, but this is what I need to live my life.
I do understand this, and the point I'm making is, whether we like it or not, is there are two sexes, and women have fought very long and hard for the right to have single-sex spaces, and that is it. That is it, right? Now, should there be a group of people who say, we want you to respect our rights, I have no objection to a toilet that is made available to those people who want their space. But you cannot just demand that you are treated as a woman. That's it. You just can't demand that you're treated as a woman by declaration. Sorry.
Well, I say wherever there are toilets that are maybe for everybody to use, there should also be toilets that are like single bathrooms. Separate bathrooms.
Yes, exactly. And people can... Yeah, exactly. But listen, it's not a question of going to the wall on toilets, by the way. I do not spend my life fighting on this. We're looking at a story in the paper in which this has been a campaign to change the nature of single-sex toilets. So it's not as though women have been going out saying, keep everyone out of the toilets. What I'm saying, this is a campaign in Whitehall that changes the nature of the facilities that are available to women in Whitehall. And anybody who challenges it gets called a bigot. And it's coming from HR. And the reason why this is very important, and by the way, the Equalities Commission has made it quite clear in the law that single-sex provision is entirely appropriate in lots of instances. And that might be hospital wards, it might be in prisons and so on, but we're not allowed to say that, even though that's legally entirely appropriate position.
Isn't it interesting nobody wants to go into men's toilets?
Well, I mean, the only thing I said, the worst thing about GBNews is the shared toilets. You can't relax.
I quite agree.
So send that message upstairs.
Yeah.
There is a little bathroom around the corner.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you, I mean, it really is like, I hate it.
I know,
And that's only bumping into people over the washing thing.
I hate it too.
So
I
awkward.
absolutely hate it. Yeah.
All right, Stephen?
You don't?
No, it doesn't bother me. I only pop in for a quick wee. What's the problem?
That won't always work, Stephen.
No.
Too much information, as they say.
Anyway, we're leaving it there, you
Campaign
two.
for better bathrooms, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. I sort of think I know what you're going to say, but anyway, get in touch. Love to hear from you.
Shall we move on?
Yes, the Prime Minister has met the Prince of Wales at the Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit in Kigali.
Yeah, the details of their meeting remains unclear, but follows private comments, of course, by Prince Charles, reportedly anyway, calling the government's policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda appalling.
Well, the Home Secretary says it will resume plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing, but so far only a handful of officials have been to the hostel where the first refugees will be sent, if they're ever sent.
So we're asking, what is the accommodation really like there? GB News' political editor Darren McCaffrey, who's currently with the Prime Minister in Rwanda, sent us this report.
Well, the motto here at the Hope Hostel in Kigali is come as a guest, leave as a friend. This is, frankly, the accommodation that the British government hope that hundreds, thousands of failed migrants to the UK will end up here in Rwanda. But at the moment, there's no one in them. They're entirely empty, and that is because, of course, of those court rulings, which meant that those planes could not take off, which has meant that the government's policy is in peril. They insist, and the Prime Minister here in Rwanda is insistent, that he wants this plan to work, that it's a sensible plan, a plan that will act as a deterrent to stop people crossing the English Channel in those small boats. But it is also a costlier plan, a plan that's cost over £100 million to UK taxpayers. And the big question for the government is, can they make it work? But also a big question for us, given the questions that are being raised, given the comments by Prince Charles, who allegedly called this appalling, this policy, is what is the actual accommodation like? What are the areas, the facilities like for the migrants that may well end up here? So let's have a look inside. And so this is the main reception area inside the hostel. As you can see, these gentlemen here are going to check people in. And also what's notable, if you look at this, is that lots of the signs actually are on different languages, a recognition that if, and it is big if, migrants do arrive here, they will be from many different parts of the world. But there are 50 rooms in this complex, 2 people to a room. It could house up to 100 people. Let's have a look upstairs. The hostel is equipped with all sorts of stuff that you need for modern life, unsurprisingly. They've got internet rooms with laptops and computers that people access the internet, communal laundry spaces here, and also communal bathrooms that the migrants will be able to use. Well, there's lots of communal space here for the people who potentially move here, including prayer rooms. But we have to remember that the Labour Party have branded this as unworkable, but also as immoral, and a policy that they do not think should be happening. And we know also that there are many legal cases against all of this, and those cases, those legal proceedings, are likely to continue for the weeks and months to come. So as you can see, the facilities are pretty spacious, pretty airy. Frankly, they're quite smart in this complex, and we take you through to kind of show you what the rooms are like. As I say, the rooms are going to be shared ultimately, but you know, they are very tidy, they're very clean. There's a lot of space here, even for 2 people. And in the end, the government are hoping they're going to fill these rooms. And the Rwandans, it must be said themselves, are very proud of these facilities. And it's not just this complex, there are others on standby as well. But the big question, of course, for the government is ultimately, will people end up in these rooms? They've paid 120 million quid for them. The Rwandans tell us they've already received that money. They've already spent that money. The big question is, if they cannot get this policy to work, if those planes do not take off, will that money ultimately have been wasted for British taxpayers?
Darren McCaffrey there. I have to say, they look better than some of the sort of
any of the
hotels,
reception centres or anything that we provide here.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I know it's not the country they want to be in, which is obviously the issue, and the moral issues as Darren was talking about, but as far as accommodation goes, they look pretty good to me.
It's interesting actually seeing it, isn't it, for the first time properly. Yeah, it does look good at the moment anyway.
Yeah, love to get your thoughts on that. GBviews at gbnews.uk, and also on the big issues we've been talking about. I mean, they are big issues, a lot of them.
Huge,
in the
some
papers.
of them. I mean, the Roe v. Wade overturning in the United States and the knock-on effect it's going to have on various states immediately, and whether it'll have any effect. Do you feel as though the world is going more right-wing and slightly out of control? I mean, women's rights and privileges being taken away I mean, I feel very uptight about it, because in the US, there are women now who have fewer rights than their mothers and grandmothers over their own bodies.
It's very interesting. Keep your thoughts coming through. We'll reflect all of those in the next hour and bring you all the top stories, including the latest, of course, on today's train strikes.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Off the rails, another day of strike action will affect train services across much of the country today.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Saturday, the 25th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
As you know, we're on your TV, we're on your radio, and we're online. So whatever you get up to today, you can take us out and about with you. And this is what you're waking up to.
Well, today, members of the RMT union staged their third 24-hour strike this week in a dispute over jobs, pay and working conditions. It means only a fifth of rail services will run, so do please check before you travel. We're asking you today whether you think the country has coped and is still coping despite the strikes.
The PM has met Prince Charles in Rwanda. Boris Johnson said they had a good old chinwag after the Prince of Wales reportedly criticised the asylum policy to send refugees to the country.
In the US, the constitutional right to abortion has been scrapped. Protections that have been in place for nearly 50 years were overturned in the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. It now means that individual states can decide on whether they want to ban abortion outright. The decision has seen widespread condemnation.
Loads of you getting in touch this morning. We're going to go through a lot of your views very shortly. If you want to join the discussions, please do. Whatever your view is, it's valid and we will reflect it. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Loads of you getting in touch on a load of different issues. Someone called Tess, I think, who's got a very long name, says, can you tell Claire Fox, who will be listening, morning Claire, she's next door, that I have not lost faith in Boris Johnson. He needs to be left to get on with the job. That's a problem since he became PM. He's never been allowed to just get on and be PM. I don't know, is that true?
Well, I always think he faced a completely different agenda than the one he thought he was going to be able to deliver, because the pandemic happened and the cost of living crisis and everything that's occurred since then. It hasn't been the couple of years that he thought it was going to be when he became Prime Minister.
Tom O'Brien says Boris Johnson lost 2 by-elections. Given the concerted campaign by elements of the media, it's hardly a surprise.
Media's fault?
I don't think so. I mean, look, it's very unlikely that any government wins a by-election mid-term.
But also, if you become Prime Minister because you're a popular figure and you're playing to the media, you're playing to the people, obviously, then you can't really turn around later and say it's the media's fault that it all went wrong, because it was always part of the equation, particularly when it came to Boris Johnson, surely.
Well, I would agree with that. Tom O'Brien, though, says now Boris needs to focus on delivering Conservative policies, lower taxes, end the Green folly, end illegal immigration, end the Northern Ireland Protocol, be Conservative. And I think that a lot of people would agree with that.
Yes.
Let us know what you think.
Yes, absolutely. Do let us know. If you voted Conservative because you thought you were voting for a Conservative government and feel that actually you've got anything but, it'd be very interesting to hear your view. GBviews at gbnews.uk, please.
Now, are you planning, or were you planning, to catch a train today?
Well, perhaps you're going to think again, because Britain faces its third rail strike within a week today. Means that only a fifth of services are going to run today.
Yeah, members of the RMT will be on picket lines in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions.
And as well as the strike from the RMT, other unions are following suit, including ASLEF, which will affect services in South London and Hull.
Last night, the Transport Secretary said the rail strikes are less effective because many people can just work from home. He said while their action is hitting some people at the worst possible time, this week has also shown that overall rail strikes are not as effective a tool for the unions as they once were. What do you think?
Dee says there's no one else to blame but Johnson. He is where the buck stops. Fair enough.
Yeah. Very interesting, isn't it? I mean, also, there is so much concern over whether... when it comes to the rail strikes, how much of a role the government has played in this. It's what the unions are saying. They're saying, well, the government's stopping the negotiations happening properly. Actually, Network Rail, who's involved in the negotiations, denied that. But anyway, but were you planning to go anywhere today? Because someone who was meant to be here doing the papers, actually, today, was Pete Price up in Liverpool. Morning, Pete. You couldn't make it down.
I couldn't make it down at all. And can I break one of the famous myths now because of the pandemic? When people are on screen, as I am now, at this time of the morning, yes, you're right. I've got a beautiful top on, but me pyjama bottoms.
Absolutely true. I think I did 2 years of doing Zoom things, and I was just wearing my jeans.
On a serious note, I was supposed to be there today. I couldn't get down. I wish they wouldn't call it a three-day strike. It's not a three-day strike at all. It goes on. It goes on each day in between, and it's absolute chaos. It was chaos the week before. My train was 4.5 hours late. It's got to be changed. And the sad thing is about the whole rail strike, it affects people that are the ones that suffer most, ordinary people. Now, 5.5 million plus people, and I was one of them, could not work through the pandemic. And now we're getting the chance to work. We can't work at all because of the chaos. People going on holiday, people going to Glastonbury, people going to tennis. People are having major, major problems. So it affects the real people in the world. Now, they say that they kept the trains going all the way through the pandemic. Well, they did indeed, and it's fantastic they did. But they hardly worked, as in there was no passengers because nobody was out there. But those people who worked had structure to their life. They weren't stuck indoors, so they had a better life than other people did have. The people on furlough, they were the ones that did a little bit better. The problem is, and Mick Lynch, I think, is a great union leader. He's fighting for their pensions and rights and redundancies. That I understand, and I think he's doing a great job for them. But every single person wants a pay rise. Everyone. We're all worried about the cost of living, whether you're a pensioner, whether you're young, whether you're a student, whatever. There's got to be another way of doing it. But we've been in a pandemic. People keep forgetting. We've been in the most terrible time ever. Not just us, but other countries. And this is a time where we've got to bring passengers back into London and Liverpool and Leeds and Manchester and Birmingham. We've got to put lifeblood back into the cities, to give jobs, to put money in the shops. We've got to do it. I understand the lads. And you can imagine the picket lines in Liverpool are very strong. They're very union orientated here. And I applaud them and I understand. But there's got to be another way of doing it. And this is just the start. There's going to be chaos. I hate even painting this picture, but there's going to be chaos. I am distressed that I'm not there today because I love working GBNews. I should be sitting next to Anne Diamond, and I'm really sad about it. I'm just one. Thank goodness I've got a little bit of money put away and a pension, but I would like to work, please.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of focus on London with all of this, Pete, and understandably so. There's been tube strikes as well, and sort of the capital gets very congested, though perhaps not as congested as some people feared. But what about places like Liverpool and those places around the country? I know a lot of places in Wales as well just seem to have been sort of cut off entirely from the West Coast main line, for example. I mean, are we seeing a lot of smaller communities just being sort of left in isolation, and yet unless you've got a car?
Completely, Stephen, completely. Thank goodness the weather's good for people to at least walk somewhere and go to a shop. But, excuse me, a lot of people are isolated and have come out of isolation because of the pandemic, and now they're back into isolation. And it's also people's health and well-being. You know, people came through this pandemic. We'll never get to the bottom of anybody's mental health problems and how they coped. I was lucky I could get out and about because of the job I do. I was allowed out and I structured my life. When you worked, you structured. But now all of a sudden it's all shut down again. And believe me, it's not a 3-day strike in any shape or form. It's more than 3 days. It's chaos on either side of the days. So I don't know, but I understand everybody wants to get more money because of the situation in this country and the world. It isn't just us, but there's got to be another way of doing it.
Yeah, now you say that there's got to be a better way. Why can't somebody come up with a better way? And it appears not. Yet again, we have experienced negotiators on both sides who seem to walk out on each other after losing their tempers with each other or getting to a stalemate. And then the unions are left with no other weapon, really, other than strike action. You say there has to be a better way, but it appears that nobody is able to think of one.
It's interesting you say that, Anne. Sorry about this. Wouldn't it be nice to know the truth of what went on at the meetings? Because we get the spin doctors spinning everything. We don't know who actually owns the railways anymore. We don't know where the government stood in that. I think they paid out 16 billion to the industry and to the employees. So we never get to the bottom of the story. I think Mick Lynch is about one of the best union leaders I've seen around. And he's fighting for his members, and rightly so. But then we hear that the planes are going to be going on strike, all of them at different times in August and July. I mean, people's well-being. They've just suffered for 2.5 years in a pandemic. And it really is scary times. I wouldn't be a politician to save my life.
At least you'd be straight talking about it, Pete. Good to see you this morning. Enjoy sunny Liverpool. Wish we were there with you.
I'm back next Saturday.
Yes. Excellent. We look forward
Pete,
to it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Terry has got in touch. Hi, Terry. I worked on the railways until recently, but because I moved to a different part of the country, and we were very well paid. I do a similar job now, but get paid less than half of what I was earning on the railways.
It can be a well-paid job. Depends what you're doing.
And maybe it depends where you live too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the argument that the unions are making, which you've got to say is a very valid point, is you're the bosses who earn a lot of money, and I don't argue with that. I think if you're a boss, you probably have an awful lot of responsibility. But they have had significant pay rises, and the other people haven't.
Wrong.
Now, that doesn't seem
It's the injustice of that.
Let us know what you think. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines at 12 minutes past 7. And the Prime Minister's leadership remains under pressure following yesterday's defeat in 2 crunch by-elections. The Times reports that Tory rebels are planning a takeover of the backbench 1922 committee to try to change the rules to allow another confidence vote.
And if you've just joined us, obviously we've just been talking about it. A fifth of train services are going to run today, only a fifth, due to another 24-hour strike by thousands of rail workers. Members of the RMT union have walked out for the 3rd time this week in a dispute over pay, jobs and conditions.
Protests have taken place in the UK after the US Supreme Court ended the constitutional right to abortion in the United States. Events were held outside the American Embassy in London and the US Consulate in Edinburgh, with protesters holding signs. Meanwhile, at Glastonbury, Billie Eilish described it as a dark day for women.
2 people are dead and 14 have been wounded in a shooting at a nightclub in Norway's capital, Oslo. Police have 1 suspect in custody and are trying to determine their motive. The incident took place just hours before Oslo is due to hold its annual Pride Parade.
Paul McCartney will make history later when he becomes Glastonbury's oldest solo headliner. He'll take to the stage exactly 1 week after celebrating his 80th birthday. And last night, Billie Eilish was
the
Glastonbury's youngest ever solo performer.
Yeah. I can't believe Paul is 80. I mean, that sort of ages us all, doesn't it, really? Do you know, last night he did a special warm-up sort of concert because tonight is his big day at Glastonbury, in a warehouse in Frome in Somerset, which is just down the road from Glastonbury, of course. 800 people were told late on Thursday night that there were going to be tickets for sale, and Macca did his set that he's going to do tonight.
I wonder how much the tickets were.
I Want to Be Your Man was the first number.
Right.
I don't know how much they sold for, but probably not that much, and it was just a sort of last-minute thing that obviously did. So he did I Want to Be Your Man, then quite a few Wings-type songs.
Helter Skelter.
Yeah.
Band on the Run.
Oobla-dee, oobla-da, which I love. Always loved that one. She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. I don't know that one.
I'm not familiar with that one. Maybe it's a new number.
Let It Be, of course, and Lady Madonna, Band on the Run, Get Back, Hey Jude. And then ended it off with Golden Slumbers.
I don't know that one.
To see. Well, unless it's the traditional Golden Slumbers.
I don't know.
Golden slumbers kiss your eyes, smiles awake you when you rise. Sleep, pretty baby, do not cry, for I will sing a lullaby. It can't be that, can it? Although you can imagine him, you know, just doing it on guitar.
Is that going to be his set for tonight?
Well, they say that's the hint. Yes, I don't think they've actually announced that will be the set. But obviously, for 800 people in Frome, it got very quickly sold out, as you can imagine, in this warehouse. They had a marvellous, marvellous night.
Well, I think that was a GBNews exclusive. I don't think anyone has ever heard Anne Diamond sing on TV before.
I don't think you could call it singing, really, could you?
No, very good.
It was a little warble, that's all it was.
Very good. Oh, well, there you go. If you were there last night, GBNews at GBNews.
Oh, let us know how it went. How much did you pay for your tickets?
I don't know. I bet.
Maybe.
I don't know. It must have been a few quid. You'd pay to see Macca, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And I'm not a sort of huge fan. I'm sort of too young, I hate to say it.
First in the queue is advertising executive Matt Hooper, 66, and his wife Victoria, who happily paid the £25
Oh,
ticket.
that's all right.
Not bad, eh?
25 quid?
Yeah, to see Macca.
Yeah, I think, you would happily pay that. Right, the Prime Minister is facing more opposition within his own party following the two by-election defeats in Tiverton and Honiton and Wakefield.
Yeah, Boris Johnson has admitted that the results were not brilliant, but vowed to listen and learn. But this seems not to be enough for some in the Conservative Party who are already holding fresh talks over a leadership move.
Yeah, now under the rules of the 1922 Committee of Backbench Conservative MPs, the Prime Minister is currently safe from a further challenge for a year. But that could change. Let's talk to Nigel Nelson, political editor of the Sunday Mirror. Morning to you, Nigel. Look, it's no surprise that there are plenty of people who never wanted Boris Johnson to be Prime Minister. And now they're doing some serious plotting and want to revolt on the 22.
Yes, that's right. I mean, a lot of them held their noses and voted for him because they saw him as a vote winner. And what these two by-elections have shown is that actually he's a vote loser, which is why they're now talking about getting rid of him. So the only way they can really do that is to change the rules so he can be challenged more than once in a year. Now, although you've got 2 in 5 Tory MPs who have lost faith in Boris Johnson, we know that from the last no confidence vote, I think there will be an awful lot of other MPs who will find it a bit uncomfortable to start changing the rules simply because they didn't work, on the basis that what they should have done is got it right first time round. So they didn't organise themselves. And as a result, they got to the necessary 54 letters to get the no confidence vote, but they didn't do the number crunching to make sure they could win it. So that made Boris Johnson safe. What I would imagine is that had they held off and held the no confidence vote now, I think they probably could have got rid of him.
Yes, but it's not going to stop the plotting now, is it? Whether it'll be successful or not and how long it will take. So shouldn't he just do the decent thing and actually read the room? He's not going to, though, is he?
No, I don't think he is. And I agree with you, Anne. I think he should have resigned some time ago. I mean, really, when the first fine came through for holding number 10 parties, that was the point when really he ought to go, because that's where that's at the bottom of all this. I mean, what we saw in certainly in Tiverton and a bit in Wakefield, it's not so much now that people are angry about the fact that he broke the rules. what has happened is that there's been a complete loss of trust in the Prime Minister. And that's the real long-term problem. Once you've lost trust, it's very hard to get it back. So, yes, I mean, you're absolutely right that what he should really do is do what is best for the party and the country, and to go. And the only way I can see that possibly happening now is if the cabinet tell him to do just that. There's no sign of that happening, by the way. We've seen Oliver Dowden's resignation, but it's the only one. But if you remember when Margaret Thatcher lost her authority, that's the way that she went. The cabinet went to her and said, look, we'll support you, but we don't think the party will. We really do think it's time for you to resign. That's what cabinet ministers should be telling Boris Johnson at the moment.
So it's a bit, you can understand people looking at it and going, it's all a bit snouts in the trough, isn't it? It's all about Conservative members of Parliament who were more than happy to back Boris Johnson when they thought he was going to get them to win a seat. And now they're just worried about their own jobs. They don't really care about anything else. They're just worried about keeping their own jobs, so get the PM out, which hardly seems fair.
Well, I mean, that's politics for you. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of self-interest. I mean, if you look at the Tiverton result, there are 290 Tory MPs with lower majorities than one in Tiverton. And they can see that if Boris Johnson continues to lead them, they're like to lose their seats and therefore their jobs. So, yes, there's quite a bit of self-interest going on here. But in a sense, I don't blame MPs for that. It's been like that through history.
What I can't understand is why people like Keir Starmer and others in opposition, as it were, keep calling for him to resign. Because actually, isn't it in their interest, if they believe he is so bad at his job, isn't it in their interest for him to stay and make the Tories unelectable next election?
Yes, that's certainly the counterfactual view. But again, this is politics. And I think that Keir Starmer, his authority would be damaged a bit if he said, oh, Boris Johnson should stay, isn't he wonderful or whatever. No, I mean, I think that when you see a Prime Minister who's seriously wounded and you are trying to be Prime Minister yourself, you really do have to go along and call for him to quit. It would be interesting, though, as you say, that if there was a new leader of the Tory party, I mean, say it was Jeremy Hunt or Liz Truss or Tom Tugendhat, these are all people who are interested in the job. It may well be that will revitalise Tory fortunes, and that would be to the detriment of Labour. When John Major took over from Margaret Thatcher, what it looked like was a new government, and as a result, he went on to win the next election.
Yeah, with that in mind, though, the Prime Minister could well be thinking of the benefits of the Conservative Party in all of this, couldn't he? Because if he decided to call it quits now, well, the honeymoon period for any new leader would be over well before a general election, unless a snap one was called. If he waited another 12 months or so, perhaps that would be of benefit to the party.
Well, I mean, that's the key. It will be a snap general election, I think. That we're looking at the moment at a general election probably next year rather than 2024 anyway. So what I would expect a new leader to do when they came in is try and get a snap general election. So you could be in for one later on this year on that basis, or even early next year. So that would be the way to use that honeymoon period and try and win another term.
Sorry, Nigel, why do you think there would be a general election next year rather than 24?
Well, because we've got rid of the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, which was the thing that David Cameron brought in to bolster up the coalition, and meant there would only be elections every 5 years. Now, we know that never happened anyway, that you can still call an election if most MPs wanted it. But now that the Fixed Parliaments Act has gone, it is now in the gift of the Prime Minister to decide the election date. So in that event, if there were to be a new Tory leader, it would be in their interest to go sooner rather than later.
Oh, well, it's interesting. Nigel, good to talk to you, as always. Thanks very much indeed.
Oh, bliss, to look forward to a general election next year.
I don't know. Is that what the country needs, to revitalise things? We do seem like we've got into a bit of a quagmire, and perhaps
I think a lot of people would feel it was the only fair way now to actually hold the last government to account and maybe to get some fresh campaigning going and think of, I don't know, just to turn over a new leaf.
And, and it would bring about promises of tax cuts and
yes,
proper stuff on
which
cost of
perhaps
living.
is needed.
It would, but would you support? I don't know. Would you want Boris Johnson to be Prime Minister to lead that through, or not? gbviews@gbnews.uk. It's just so interesting because so many of you get in touch saying it's time Boris went, and the other 50%, 60% maybe, say no, we want Boris Johnson to stay. Let us know what you think.
He could call a snap-gen election when he wants to, couldn't he? He could do it this summer.
He could do, but I think he's going to have to announce things like tax cuts first.
Yeah.
To wet people's whistle.
And that means trying to get Rishi Sunak on board for those. And if Rishi Sunak sees himself as a potential candidate for leadership, will he cooperate with that?
That might have to be a reshuffle first.
And they're hinting at a reshuffle this summer, aren't they?
Interesting times
They're talking
ahead.
about moving Priti Patel into Oliver Dowden's role.
Are they?
Yeah, which would be seen as a sideways motion or even a demotion.
Oh.
So that's just what the papers are gossiping about today.
Yeah, well, you never know. You wonder where they get it from, don't you?
Well, some is briefed and some is just, they throw it out there, I think, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, but the problem with all of this, as we've seen, is that people don't... There doesn't seem to be the appetite for, despite these by-election results, when you look at the polls, there still isn't enough support for Labour, for Keir Starmer. There isn't an appetite for him particularly. So, I don't know. It's difficult. I wouldn't want to place a bet on the general election at the moment.
No.
You say Boris
Interesting,
is a vote winner. He's an election winner. We shall see. Let us know what you think. More to come for you, including all the sport in just a moment with Aidan McGee.
Good morning, I'm Helen Roberts with your weather update, and this weekend is looking rather changeable, certainly in comparison with some recent days over the past week or so, and it's all thanks to this area of low pressure, very slow moving, and it's with us right the way through the course of this weekend. Initially introducing this cold front, which will actually bring some better nights if you've been struggling to sleep with the humidity over recent nights, feeling a little bit cooler and fresher than it has done. So for Saturday, we start on quite a bright note, but quickly these rash of showers developing, particularly across western parts of the country. Some of those will be heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. The best chance of seeing drier and brighter weather throughout the day is across East Anglia and the southeast of England. And this is also where we'll tend to get the higher temperatures into the low 20s. So feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine. But it is looking changeable, and there's yet more cloud and rain swinging in from the west through the course of tonight and into the start of Sunday. This will be a band of slightly more persistent rain as we head into the early hours of Sunday morning. As I mentioned, feeling a little bit fresher than it has done over some recent nights, but still not cool by any stretch. So we start Sunday again with some bright spells, particularly across the eastern side of the UK, but quite a lot of cloud already piling up across western areas, and further showers or perhaps longer spells of rain. And again, they could be heavy and possibly thundery at times. Still, the best chance of drier and brighter conditions is across the southeast corner of the UK, and again, temperatures here just about climbing into the low 20s given that sunshine. And there's really no significant change as we head into the early part of next week, certainly staying on the changeable side with further showers, which will be heavy at times, but occasional bright or sunny spells too.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 7:30 on the nose. This is breakfast with Stephen in blue and Anne in nuclear green.
It is a bit. It is a bit nuclear, isn't it? I'm sorry
love
about
it.
that. If it's beaming, it's almost radiating its own heat, isn't it?
I love the fact that you always wear bright colours.
I do like bright colours. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's just what you need in the morning. I wish I hadn't said that now. Aidan McGee is here in grey. But
well, no, not really. It's just sort of navy.
Stylish.
Great.
I've dug this out of the wardrobe. This was a staple of my daily ensemble maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We go back a little while here, but I thought, no, I'll give it a little run out. You know.
You always look very.
Oh, thanks very much
Really
indeed.
do.
Thank you. Do you remember that? Remember Radiation? Talking of that, do you remember the Ready Break adverts?
Oh,
used to have the outline of the young boy
that's
on the yeah, exactly. I'm not comparing you to that, but the principle's the same.
If only I'd had some ready.
I remember eating Reggie Breck and being very disappointed that I didn't actually feel warm.
Yes.
It was porridge, wasn't
Have
it?
it with
It's
hot
porridge,
Yeah.
basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You don't see it around much anymore, do you?
No, I
milk.
don't.
Ready.
No.
Weetabix still, wouldn't
Yeah, big time. Yeah, exactly.
I do like a bit of porridge.
Yeah,
I'll be honest. Look, what's happening with the sport this morning and the Johnny Bairstow is just talking about life on a roller coaster. It's like a Ronan Keating song.
Yeah, no, 2000 that was released, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah, it was. So a bit of extra trivia there. Sorry. So it's become a bit more interesting watching cricket lately. They were a very turgid watch for years, England, with the Test team really falling apart in the last few years. They had a poor run of form. Their away form was terrible. But now, you know, if you look at the back of the Daily Mail, it's brilliant barnstorming Bairstow. Super Johnny puts bums on seats. Now, the situation was yesterday, England have already won the series against New Zealand. And I suppose you could probably say, well, if it's already won, then the pressure's off. You know, the stakes aren't particularly high. But, I mean, it shouldn't be criticised for that because the hard work is done. But they were left yesterday with a chase of 329. It didn't look very, very hopeful because England were out for, well, so they weren't out, but they started on 55 for 6. So enter Bairstow from stage left. He gets 100 in less than 100 balls. He finishes 130. Jamie Overton alongside him at 89. It's meant to be kind of a ushering in of a new era. He's talking about being able to play with abandon, release from the shackles, and he produced a really good watch yesterday. But the question is, are we again just too reliant on one batsman? We talked about Joe Root, didn't we, and all the burden of the captaincy that he had before Christmas, especially around the period of the Ashes. He was doing really well, fronting up the Australian bowl attack, but ultimately, he was the only one who was any good at batting, and you know, it
must
need
have been
everybody.
lovely to watch, though.
Yeah, it was.
You know, when you love a sport, you actually see it being done really well.
Yes, exactly, and it's also it's a home crowd as well at Headingley. It's you know, that's one good thing cricket does. It goes around into the regions better than football does. I mean, remember back in 20 years ago when England were touring around the country, they were very well received in Manchester, Liverpool, everywhere else. We're seeing that with the cricket side, and we have done forever. They don't just play at the Oval, they don't just play at Lords, they go to Headingley, they go to Trent Bridge, they go to Durham, etc., etc. So, yeah, really good knock there. They're underway at 11 o'clock this morning, again in Headingley, and still a little bit of work to do. They're still trailing. They're trailing by 65 runs, and we're hoping they can pull through today.
Yeah. OK, transfer news.
Yeah, that's right. Calvin Phillips, again, back page of the Mirror, Galacticos is called, and that's instead of Galacticos. They've put KAL to represent Calvin. But yeah, look, very, very cheap. I mean, you're gonna be surprised when I say 45
million.
Very cheap. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, he's an England starter. He's going to play at the World Cup. He was, regular. He's played every game at Euro 2020. So, £45 million for him. I was told yesterday by a contact of mine that Leeds actually did the deal a month ago when they thought they were getting relegated.
Right.
And they didn't want to risk a situation where they're having a fire sale, having got relegated. As it turned out, they stayed up. They won the Brentford on the last day of the season. Calvin Phillips, probably one of their stellar players. They're worried about losing Rafinha to Arsenal, who we'll touch on in a minute. But yeah, I mean, Manchester City have now got Erling Haaland, who's one of the best players in the world, and Calvin Phillips for under £100 million. Again, it sounds like telephone numbers, but when you actually look at it in the cold light of day, just look at numbers and what these players, I believe they're worth. I mean, I think in a fair market, if all being well with their contracts with plenty of time to run, I'd have said that both players were probably worth £200 million between them, and they've got them for 100.
I tell you what, Aidan, I would not want to go shopping with you.
No, 45 million.
You think everything's really cheap?
No, not at all. You think everything's expensive?
I do think everything's expensive.
It's just a different world.
Oh dear! Look, we've got to leave it there.
Sure.
But we will.
Just drop my pen.
Just drop your pen. But we'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Sure,
on.
see you a bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, ahead of this year's Armed Forces Day, British Army numbers have actually fallen by 2% in the last year alone. That's according to data published today by the MOD.
Now, the latest service personnel stats from the MOD reveal that the British Army had 680 fewer troops in April than at the start of the year, with ministers set to axe 1 in 5 soldiers from the infantry by the time of the next election.
What's going on then? For more, let's speak to Shadow Secretary of State for Defence, John Healey. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. What is going on here? How come that numbers are going down in our army?
It follows a decade of defence cuts. 40,000 full-time troops lost since 2010, 1 in 5 of our surface Navy ships taken out of service, and more than 200 RAF planes axed. And the result is that satisfaction with Army and Armed Forces life has fallen below 50%. So we've got something of a crisis in our defence forces. These latest figures are just part of a picture we've seen for too long. And especially now when we face the fresh threats of Russia, not just to Britain, but to European security, and when other threats, including from terrorism, are growing, this is the wrong time to be cutting even deeper into our army numbers, which is what the government planned to do.
So would the Labour Party, if in government, are you going to commit to increasing defence spending?
We would halt, first, on day one, we would halt any further cuts to army numbers. These are people that helped the country through the COVID crisis. They defend us every day on the borders of Russia and under our oceans. Secondly, we would double down on our first British duty, which is to defend Britain and the NATO area. We can't have defence planning driven by where the business opportunities may lie in the Indo-Pacific. And finally, the other priority for me as Labour's Defence Secretary would be to get to grips with the reform needed in military procurement, where the government in the last 3 years alone has wasted more than £5 billion. And I'd start making sure that British defence investment was directed first to British jobs, British industry.
That's all well and good.
Our economy and our sovereignty.
There's going to be a lot of people watching, and I know we're watched actually by quite a lot of people within the armed forces who are going to say, well, it's all right to say you're going to stop defence cuts, but if you say there's been dramatic cuts, well, we know there's been dramatic cuts over the last 10 years, but if you're not going to start increasing defence spending, you're not really going to change much.
You know, one of the things about being in opposition is that you do need access to the full information, and particularly in defence, you need to know where the secret information about risks lie before you make those sort of commitments. But a day one commitment to halt any further cuts, to rethink plans for the future, to double down on our NATO duties, and also to get to grips with the huge waste that goes on in military procurement would be a good start and a signal of intent for the future. And you're quite right. If to all those who serve or have served in our forces, listening regularly as they do to your programme, we're also speaking on Armed Forces Day, the annual event when we all recognise and pay tribute for the service that people have given to our country, and I'm grateful, deeply grateful, and proud of them for that.
Yes, it's important that we all remember that too. But can I ask you, you mentioned there being in opposition, what about your ambitions, obviously, to get into government? For instance, front page of the Daily Mail, Sajid Javid is saying, can you tell the public the truth, whether there is an anti-Tory pact, a pact between yourself and the Lib Dems to tactically tackle the next election?
No pact. We fight for the votes and we fight the case for a Labour government in future right across the United Kingdom, Scotland, Wales and England. And I think we're now credibly the only national party that has strong representation and results across the UK. Big boost, certainly, to our plans and our prospects and the prospects for the public in getting a change of government at the next election. From the by-elections this week, the best result for Labour in Wakefield for 10 years. And based on a significant swing, a shift, if you like, in voters from Conservative to Labour, which in the end holds the key to the result of the next election. And I'd spent a lot of time campaigning in Wakefield, very struck by the level of disgust and discontent as people, I think, have seen through Boris Johnson and have lost confidence in the Conservatives doing the basic job of government now. And so it's our job in opposition until the next election to try and hold them to account and offer some of the plans that would make a difference, including on the cost of living, that we're just not seeing from the government itself.
Look, people aren't going to believe you if you say there's no agreement here. Look at Tiverton and Honiton. Liz Pole, your candidate, got 11,654 votes, 19.5% in 2019. She got 1,562 votes on Thursday. I mean, the argument there is, yes, you stood a candidate, you just didn't do any campaigning.
She's a very good candidate. She's a great advocate for those sort of rural communities. But I think what we saw this week down in Tiverton and Honiton was that people decided to vote tactically. It was the public and individual voters making up their minds. There is no pact or joint plan between Labour and the Liberal Democrats over fighting these elections, because we want a Labour government.
Forgive me for jumping in.
Will deliver the sort of big changes.
Forgive me,
and the leadership that the government lacks at the moment.
Mr. Healy, why would they vote tactically for the Lib Dems in that seat and not for the Labour Party, which came second in 2019, and the Lib Dems came third, and it swung the other way round? Why would they, if they're going to vote tactically in Tiverton and Honiton, why would they not vote tactically for the Labour Party?
Because they judged that in these circumstances this week, in this by-election, the Liberal Democrats had a better chance of defeating the Conservative candidate than Labour did. Just as in Wakefield, where it was a straight Labour-Conservative fight, the significant part of that wasn't that we had a lot of Lib Dem voters, and there aren't that many in Wakefield switching to Labour, but we had former Conservative voters switching directly to Labour on a level that, if it was repeated at a general election, would give us a Labour government and a fresh leadership that the country needs.
Well, they always say you should never interpret a by-election in general election terms. But even if you did, you would still need a pact, wouldn't you, to form a government?
Well, you're quite right about trying to extend by-election results into a general election. But this is what the polling analysts do. Now, the result in Wakefield, if we're able to maintain the progress and win back other Conservative voters in other constituencies, would be enough to give Labour a majority government. And we want a Labour government, we want a Labour plan for the country, we want a Labour leadership for the country, and that's what we're working for. And we've made enormous progress since 2019, when Labour suffered its worst election defeat for 100 years. If you like, Keir Starmer's trying to do in just 4 years what was done over 14 years by Kinnock, Smith and Blair, to bring Labour back from the brink and to put us in front of the people at the next election with a plan for government and a confidence that the public currently lack in the Prime Minister and the Conservatives at present.
But it's only Blair that made Labour electable, isn't it? Since then, since the end of New Labour, Labour hasn't really chimed with the British electorate, has it?
No, it was the 1997 election was the result of a long period of hard work, reform, and particularly that challenge to win back the confidence of the British people to say, yes, Labour in government will give you a chance. We can see the direction you want to take the country. And we're covering exactly that same ground now. And, you know, what Wakefield tells us is that people were and are still looking to Labour for the answers to the cost of living crisis, just as we did with the plan for a windfall tax on energy firms to be able to fund help with energy costs, just as we're arguing for to get the government to back off the national insurance rise that they put on working people, to take VAT off energy costs, and to put in place invest big in green tech and jobs for the future so that we can build, make, sell more in Britain, have a stronger economy and also stronger independence as a country.
Are you honestly telling us that Keir Starmer's Labour Party now is as exciting as Tony Blair's New Labour was in '97?
No, I'm not, but I am saying that the public think Keir Starmer is more honest than other politicians, and quite honestly, a bit of integrity, decency, competence within government is what we lack at the moment to sort out the problems that people are facing, give fresh leadership to the country, and that will go a long way to giving Britain, putting Britain back on the right track for the future.
OK. John Healy, got to leave it there. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. Got lots more coming up for you in just 2 minutes.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 7:47. Now today, just in case you didn't know, is Armed Forces Day, a chance to recognise and pay tribute to Britain's serving men and women, veterans and of course their families.
Yeah, more than 150 events taking place right across the country, including the national celebration in Scarborough this year.
Yeah, earlier in the week though, one community in Nottinghamshire cheered on troops based locally at a very special ceremony.
Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has more.
Each step through Eastwood and the crowd calls out louder. The town's support for the British Army shown through strength in numbers. The parading troops, 170 Infrastructure Support Engineer Group, live here too, at nearby Chetwynd Barracks. The group's members served in Afghanistan and are serving elsewhere right now. Colonel Hatcher is its commander.
6-2, 6-3, 6-6 Works Group, alongside the group's headquarters and support squadron, are on parade here today, representing the 200 or so officers and soldiers who are currently deployed both in the UK and overseas in support of training operations and other defence activity.
In 2009, the troops were granted freedom of entry into Broxtowe Borough, a medieval tradition of trust and a huge civic honour, the perfect reason to parade during Armed Forces Week.
I'm so proud of them because we don't get the opportunity to connect with the public and where we live very frequently, so it's great to be able to do this. We did a parade a couple of weeks ago in Derby for the Queen's Jubilee, and then to do this in the middle of Armed Forces Week, it's been absolutely perfect.
Armed Forces Day and the wider week means that communities can celebrate the serving men, women and veterans that form the British Army, Navy and Air Force. But it's about their families too. Back in Eastwood, Sabina arrived early before the pavement packed out.
My husband and I have been together for 19 years, married for 15, and this is the very first time I'm ever going to see him march. So just trying to contain myself because I'm a little bit excited.
Well, it means everything, doesn't it, to see our soldiers. We don't see a lot of them in Eastwood, and I've got 3 sons and none of them are in uniform, and I desperately wanted them to be.
Broxtowe's MP Darren Henry served in the Air Force.
When you're serving, you're very aware that you're there to do your duty for your country. And 170 Engineer Group came back from Afghanistan last year, for example, so we're very proud of that. But what's important about a day like today is that you express your connectivity with the community.
For Councillor Rigilovic, leading his community means keeping it connected to the forces that share these streets.
They are able, therefore, to come out, show their support for the armed forces, for the job that they do in protecting our freedom, our culture and our heritage. We are immensely proud.
The war in Ukraine has shown Britain's armed forces still have strong ties internationally, but on Armed Forces Day, the connection isn't lost locally either. Will Hollis for GB News in the East Midlands.
If you're celebrating Armed Forces today...
Let us know what you're doing. Where you are and what you're doing.
And enjoy it. It can be a real spectacle. It can also just be a lot of fun and a fair bit of drinking, especially if you're with any serving.
And lots of uniforms marching around. I always think it's brilliant, though, don't you?
It does look amazing.
Looks fantastic, yeah.
So
if you're attending anything like that, do let us know what you're up to today. It'd be nice to find out, and where you're doing it too.
Yes, and if you've got a son, daughter, husband or whatever getting dressed up at the moment in their uniform and they don't mind having their picture taken,
oh,
send
we'd
us
love
a snap
to see
and
it.
show them off and give them a
bit of family pride.
Yeah, that'd be lovely to see.
Yeah. GB Views, gbnews.uk, just in case you need reminding.
Now, the Prince of Wales has accepted countries who still call the Queen their head of state may choose to replace her one day with a president.
Yeah, he was speaking, of course, at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda yesterday, and he said he sort of acknowledged the royal family's role in the historic slave trade.
Well, our Raw reporter Cameron Walker has the latest.
Friendship, loyalty and a desire for freedom and peace. Her Majesty the Queen's vision for a Commonwealth which bears no resemblance to the empires of the past. 70 years later, her son Charles accepts that countries who still have a British sovereign as their head of state may want to choose a different path.
Each member's constitutional arrangement, as republic or monarchy, is purely a matter for each member country to decide. Arrangements such as these can change calmly and without rancour.
There was no apology from the heir to the throne for the royal family's historic role in the transportation of East African slaves to the Americas, whose ancestors now debate republicanism versus royalty. Instead, the prince decided to acknowledge the wrongs and urged Commonwealth leaders to do the same. Earlier this week, Prince Charles came face to face with the grim reality of the 1994 genocide against Tutsis in Rwanda. Rows of skulls, belonging to some of the estimated 800,000 victims. And it was Eric Marangwa's suggestion, a survivor of the genocide, who encouraged Charles to visit the memorial and reconciliation village. Eric thinks the prince's visit will help more people understand what happened and how Rwanda's rebuilding.
It's a very important action to us Rwandans, particularly survivors, but it's also a very important message to the rest of the world. It will help people to understand more about Rwanda and to appreciate how far this country has come.
The Prince represented the Queen yesterday and met Prime Minister Boris Johnson for a meeting that lasted just 15 minutes. The elephant in the room? Prince Charles's reported comments where he branded the government's scheme to send asylum seekers to Rwanda appalling. Prince Charles will one day succeed his mother as head of the Commonwealth and as head of state. And a source close to the Prince says just as with meetings with the Queen, what the Prime Minister and the Prince of Wales discuss is private. Clarence House previously stressed the Prince remains politically neutral. Cameron Walker, GB News.
I do think it's important that that these things happen. I think it's a little bit strange to stand there and say, well, if you want to become a republic, then sort of that's up to you.
I think he's just trying to come over as enlightened and realistic, I suppose. And it may well be such a concern amongst the other leaders that it just sort of felt good to have their fears acknowledged.
At least it's transparent.
Well, yes, that too, I suppose. It's interesting that the Prime Minister and Prince Charles met over a cup of tea and biscuits, apparently. For 15 minutes, they had a chin wag.
Yes. But
neither side are saying what they spoke about.
No, but do you know what? I bet it was absolutely diplomatic because you would just have to be.
Yes.
And Prince Charles would be, and I'm sure the Prime Minister would be.
It would be small talk, wouldn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, but that's the roles they have to pursue. It's what keeps us all in place.
They invited the cameras in to see them sitting down to have a cup of tea and biscuits, and then the cameras were whisked out of the room really quickly before they even started drinking their tea. So nobody knows what was said. But at least they put on a united front, which I suppose is the most important thing.
Yes, it is. I think it is. Look, we've got lots more still to come for you here on Breakfast, including the very latest on the rail strikes. Has your journey been disrupted or cancelled today? Let us know.
Good morning, I'm Helen Roberts with your weather update, and this weekend is looking rather changeable, certainly in comparison with some recent days over the past week or so, and it's all thanks to this area of low pressure, very slow moving, and it's with us right the way through the course of this weekend. Initially introducing this cold front, which will actually bring some better nights if you've been struggling to sleep with the humidity over recent nights, feeling a little bit cooler and fresher than it has done. So for Saturday, we start on quite a bright note, but quickly these rash of showers developing, particularly across western parts of the country. Some of those will be heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. The best chance of seeing drier and brighter weather throughout the day is across East Anglia and the southeast of England. And this is also where we'll tend to get the higher temperatures into the low 20s. So feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine. But it is looking changeable, and there's yet more cloud and rain swinging in from the west through the course of tonight and into the start of Sunday. This will be a band of slightly more persistent rain as we head into the early hours of Sunday morning. As I mentioned, feeling a little bit fresher than it has done over some recent nights, but still not cool by any stretch. So we start Sunday again with some bright spells, particularly across the eastern side of the UK, but quite a lot of cloud already piling up across western areas, and further showers or perhaps longer spells of rain. And again, they could be heavy and possibly thundery at times. Still, the best chance of drier and brighter conditions is across the southeast corner of the UK. And again, temperatures here just about climbing into the low 20s, given that sunshine. And there's really no significant change as we head into the early part of next week, certainly staying on the changeable side with further showers, which will be heavy at times, but occasional bright or sunny spells too.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
every morning from 6 o'clock. We'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Off the rails, another day of strike action will affect train services across much of the country today.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Saturday the 25th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the UK on your TV, your radio and online. You can take us with you, whatever you're heading out to today, getting up to, heading out to,
Or
waking up to.
Yes, generally going to encounter this morning.
Yeah, these are your headlines.
Today, members of the RMT union staged their third 24-hour strike this week in a dispute over jobs, pay and working conditions. It means that only a fifth of rail services will run, so please do check before you travel. And we're asking you today whether you think the country has coped very well despite the strikes.
The Prime Minister has met Prince Charles in Rwanda. Apparently they had a good old chinwag after the Prince of Wales reportedly criticised the Rwanda policy. That's to send refugees there.
In the United States, the constitutional right to abortion has been scrapped. Protections that have been in place for nearly 50 years were overturned in the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling, and it now means that individual states can decide on whether they want to ban abortion outright. The decision has seen widespread condemnation.
We'd love to hear from you this morning about anything we're talking about, and including, because there's a lot of heavy stuff going on today, something light and cheerful. What are you up to? How's your garden looking? What are you doing today? Where are you? Something light and cheerful. Just say hello, and we can say hello back. That would be very nice this morning.
Particularly, as we were saying, if you're taking part in some way in Armed Forces Day, are you going to a parade or anything like that? Have you got a relative, a son or a husband or somebody in the Armed Forces? Maybe you'd like to take a picture of them in their finery and send it to us.
Yeah, that would be nice. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Or maybe you're at Glastonbury watching us at the moment. I doubt anyone at Glastonbury is up this early, do you think?
No, they'll all be in hangovers in their tents.
Yeah, because they were watching the first big show last night, and it's Paul McCartney tonight, so that'll be another big one.
Actually, if the weather's I bet it'd be a hot, sweaty mess under canvas.
Yeah.
Won't it? If you're all zipped up and you'll be waking up this morning really
Well, that's it. If
clammy.
you're camping, you're always either too cold or too hot, aren't you? But you're clammy, whichever one you are.
Yeah.
Clammy cold or clammy hot.
Yeah, then you've got to sort of wake up that horrible morning feeling and then trying to find
A big
toilets.
queue to the loos, yeah. I don't know why people do it, do you? But if you have got a lovely memory of Glastonbury, if you've ever been, tell us why you did it. People go again and again, and there was that image I saw the other day in the newspapers of an 80-year-old lady who was going. She's obviously always been a bit of a Glastonbury fan, and she was going with her family, and she's 80.
See, that I don't understand. God love her, but I don't understand it. It's just, I mean, I did festivals when I was younger, and I definitely think it's a young person's
I would
game.
have thought so. The atmosphere must be terrific, and it will be incredible tonight as well. It was last night for Billie Eilish, the youngest ever performer on the Pyramid stage. And tonight you'll get the oldest ever. That's Paul McCartney, who's now 80.
He was 80 last Saturday.
I cannot believe he's 80.
No, and still going.
Like I was saying earlier, it ages us all, you know, because we all think of Paul McCartney as that sort of young lad from Liverpool, don't we? And,
well...
All right, well, I do.
No, well, not quite.
My age group, we all wanted to marry Paul.
Did you?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Really?
Yeah. Not off.
Are you glad you didn't?
No. No, I'd have been a wonderful Mrs. McCartney.
You'd have been minted.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you have changed your name? Because you've always stuck with Diamond, which is a fantastic
never changed my name, no.
But wouldn't you wanted to be McCartney?
No. No. Not even for Paul.
There you go. You could have had your own range of sausages, though.
Oh, I would, definitely.
Diamond burgers.
Sausages, yes. And Linda was lovely. I met Linda many times.
Oh, really?
Oh, she was lovely, absolutely lovely, yeah. They were a lovely couple, they really were.
Oh. Well, she makes a good sausage.
She still does, yes.
Still does, yeah. Anyway, look, to more serious matters, because are you planning to catch a train today?
Oh, if you are, tell us about it, because you may want to think again, because Britain is now facing its third rail strike within a week. It means that only a fifth of services are going to run today.
Yeah, members of the RMT will be on the picket lines again in that dispute over jobs, pay and conditions.
And as well as the strike from the RMT, other unions are following suit, including ASLEF, which will affect services in South London and Hull.
Well, last night, the Transport Secretary said the rail strikes are less effective because many commuters can now work from home, which is interesting because he was obviously talking about how it was very badly timed, and now he's saying, well, it's not really made much difference.
Yeah, but the government's also been trying to stop us from working from home. They want us back in the office.
Yeah.
And suddenly we get a rail strike.
Grant Shapps said while their action is hitting some people at the worst time, this week has also shown that they're not as effective a tool for the unions as they once were. What do you think about that? Interesting, I've just had a message. Let me dig it up. Good old phone. Someone on Twitter who's in Italy who said she's flying... here we go. This is Alex Law. I'm taking my daughter to see Billie Eilish in London. We're flying from Italy for 2 days after saving up for 2 years. How am I supposed to get from Stansted to Canary Wharf with all this disruption? No idea.
Have to be a coach or something, won't it?
Probably a coach, yeah.
Well, joining us now is our GBNews London reporter, Alice Porter, who's there. Don't know what it it's like. Is it very busy behind you? Can't quite see at the moment. How are things going?
Hello there, good morning. I have to say it is incredibly quiet here. I'm just by, we've got the Tower of London behind me, then we've got Tower Bridge. Across the way we've got HMS Belfast, Borough Market, and just a bit further down we'd have the London Eye. And so of course this would be normally a really busy tourist hotspot, and the majority of people when they come to the UK, the first thing they do is they come to London and do a lot of sightseeing. But that is going to be really very difficult today because of the train strikes. We've got the Gatwick Express, for example, isn't running. But I've been speaking to a number of businesses that operate in London within tourism, and actually they're more concerned about the lack of domestic tourists, because they're saying that actually most foreign tourists will already be here, they'll already be staying centrally, but actually the majority of people who come and sightsee in London are coming for day trips, and that simply will be incredibly difficult to happen today. And they're saying that's really going to impact businesses, and that was very much echoed by London's Chamber of Commerce today. They're saying sadly this is really a sort of double blow, these train strikes to London. In the sort of the first way, really it means with fewer tourists coming, less people spending at a very time when London is trying to get back on its feet after COVID. And then secondly, it's a double blow in another way, because there's going to be there's a worry of a lack of foreign investment, because it will be seen as London as a less attractive city to invest in. So a lot of concerns there within sort of tourism and business, but also within hospitality as well. I mean, UK hospitality say they've expected to have a 20% drop in sales this week. So that's an enormous impact. Again, a city that's trying to very much get back on its feet after the pandemic. I'm going to be down here for a lot of this morning, and hopefully things will start to pick up, but I think it's inevitable that those train strikes will mean, with only 20% of services running, that so many people won't want to come to the capital and have a lovely day sightseeing in the heart of London, which is something that on a beautiful day, on a Saturday, most people would often be very keen to do.
I guess part of the problem with all this, Alice, is there is currently no resolution to this crisis. There is at least the possibility that these strikes could continue, maybe not next week, but certainly over the next few weeks, there could be even more action.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we add to that the news that we've recently had about BA going on strike. And again, how is that all? This all has a knock-on effect, because if those flights aren't going to be coming in, or people don't have the confidence to get flights in and out of London, that whittles it all the way down to the sort of restaurants and bars that are all alongside me here, the museums, because you've got less people who feel confident coming. And I think that's going to be a real concern for a lot of people, that the RMT union debate that we've been seeing and the strikes that have been happening is just one of many other. We also haven't had a resolution to strikes on the London Underground. Now we have the BA strikes as well. None of this has been resolved, and all of that could be very, very damaging to London, which is trying to get back on its feet after a very, very difficult couple of years with very few tourists coming into the city.
It's what, 9 minutes past 8 on a Saturday morning, and I can't get over how quiet the scene is behind you. I was thinking it's almost like, in the pandemic, when the city was sort of, empty. I can't see any movement behind you
really
at all.
Is. We'll show you. We'll show you, Anne. If we just pan down so you can just see how empty it is. I mean, it's lovely to be in, I have to say. And look, it's still quite early, but there's absolutely nothing. And I've been here before at this time at the weekends, and normally it's quite busy now. You'd have people sort of queuing up to go to the Tower of London, wanting to be the first ones there, perhaps going over to Borough Market to get some brunch. This normally would be quite thriving, but I think a lot of people are simply staying at home today.
Yeah, well, look, understandably so, I guess. Alice, thank you. Catch up with you a little bit later on.
And that just shows, doesn't it, that some people who are going to travel maybe can choose to stay at home or work from home. But that just shows how having fewer people coming into London at 8 o'clock in the morning is going to affect all of the businesses around them, sandwich shops and, all of the businesses that are going to sell.
That are already struggling.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But
that looked like pandemic to me,
yeah,
honestly.
but as everyone says, if you're going to have a strike, you need to do it at a point that's going to cause disruption. Otherwise, what's the point?
Of course.
So, Yusuf's been in touch. Morning, Yusuf. Says, love catching the latest this morning on all the rail strikes. I don't know about love it, Yusuf. He says, I'm trying to get from Stafford to Birmingham, but looks like a long coach trip ahead for me rather than a speedy train. Thankfully, the YouTube stream of us is the best entertainment on a long journey.
Yes,
well, good luck, Yusuf, with that.
Greg says, hi there, I'm a father of 4 from Kingston, and we love watching you all on our early rise brekkie weekends. We're currently awaiting our last 2 teenagers to join us on the sofa for some butcher's sausage sandwiches, the best way to start the weekend.
2 teenagers before 9 o'clock in the morning? That's ambitious, isn't it?
Maybe that's a family thing.
Oh, I used to hate getting out of bed in the morning.
Right, how about this then? Ryan says, morning, Ryan. I am watching from a breezy Mauritius lunch table. We love catching breakfast with you two from out here. It always keeps us grounded and reminds us how much the UK still means to me and my husband, Joseph. Thinking of you and the great job you both do. And that's from Ryan. Thank you.
Oh, well, Ryan, Joseph, morning to you.
Mauritius.
And we say,
lunch table.
I've never been to Mauritius.
No, but it sounds nice.
It does sound very nice, it does. We were talking about Glastonbury earlier on, and I was saying I think it's a young person's game. I wouldn't want to do it now. I'm too old. But, maybe I'm wrong. Harris has been in touch, says, I love Glastonbury. This was one of the rare weekends I couldn't get off work, though. So my son has gone with his girlfriend for his first time without me or Mum. So it must have been a family outing every year. He was with us last year, and it's such an amazing feeling. He lost his mind at Stormzy. Stormzy.
Maybe there are festival families. If you're a festival, that's clearly a festival family, isn't it? They've gone along together and made it a family thing.
But why, as a parent, then, would you want to go and watch Stormzy? I can't see... I say that whole type of music, I just don't get it.
No.
I don't get it.
You just love the atmosphere. Get addicted.
It has been a long time since I've been to it. The last time I went to a festival, I was a steward, actually. And I was at the very front of the stage, stewarding the crowd as Cliff Richard was performing.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was brilliant.
Yeah.
He was brilliant.
That's what is so noticeable, I think, when you do bother to get out and go to some of these big name acts, and you actually pay good money and you go to a concert or you go to a festival and watch them, there's a reason that they are famous. There's a reason that, because they're very, very good at what they do. And I think after a live concert, you're always absolutely bedazzled by them. They're incredibly good.
There is something about live music which is phenomenal.
I went to see a Tom Jones concert once because I was reporting. So I was sent as a TV reporter. I would never have chosen to go to a Tom Jones concert on my own. But when I went, it was just my God, that man earned his money. He was brilliant.
Did you throw anything at him?
No, but they were all doing it. They were all these girls were taking their knickers off and throwing them at him. I mean, and he was using them to wipe the perspiration from his forehead. Oh, yeah. But that was part of the thing.
Oh, good God.
And another concert I had to report on was a Rod Stewart concert. Again, I wouldn't have probably gone on my own, but I went as a TV reporter, and I'd got some really good jobs. And he was just incredible. Absolutely. The energy that guy still has to this day.
One I paid for was Deacon Blue.
Oh, yes.
And I've always loved Deacon Blue, and they were live absolutely unbelievable. But one I didn't pay for, I got invited to go in a box at the O2. It's quite a long time ago now. It was Kylie.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I would never have paid to go to a Kylie concert.
But?
It's not the singing with Kylie, it's the whole...
Spectacle.
It's the spectacle and the whole performance thing. It's almost like a work of art. It was a really good night, but I would never have paid for it. I wouldn't have chosen
so
to go.
that must have been one of the ones where she had those incredible outfits.
Oh, yeah, and everything's going on stage.
And there was an incredible exhibition of all her concert gear at the V&A, at the Victoria and Albert Museum a couple of years ago. Yeah, it was wonderful. Absolutely incredible outfits. They were like 12 foot tall, some of her outfits, because they were made for her to stand on a plinth.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, these different acts, how some are about the spectacle and the event and some are just about the music. I did see, actually... years ago now, but Mick Hucknall, Simply Red. Now, that man can sing. That man can sing.
Yes, he can sing.
And that just to hear someone belt those tunes out was phenomenal.
You see, that'll be wonderful tonight at Glastonbury, to hear Paul McCartney just going solo. I mean, actually, I don't know whether he has to do Yesterday, doesn't he? Doesn't Paul McCartney have to sing Yesterday? And if he's singing Golden Slumbers at the end, maybe he just does it with his voice and a guitar, and that would sound pretty special, wouldn't it?
Mind you, how do you do a set list if you're Paul McCartney? Because everyone's going to want to hear everything.
They're going to yell for it, aren't they?
Even the Frog song.
Do you think so? Yeah. Maybe not that one.
I don't know. I just think you just want to hear that. You'd want to hear the whole back catalogue, wouldn't you?
Let us know if you've got a magic memory from going to see somebody in concert and whether you were really impressed. As I've said, I think you come away thinking, now I know why those people are so famous. They really give 110% and they earn every penny in sweat alone. Yes,
we should hit the stage and we could do a duet.
I don't think we could.
Charity single.
No!
It'd have to be charity, wouldn't it? It is 16 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines. And Boris Johnson's leadership is under pressure again, still, following yesterday's defeat, or we got the results yesterday, of those two by-elections. The Times says Tory rebels are planning a takeover of the 1922 committee, that's backbench Tory MPs, to try to change the rules on whether to allow another confidence vote earlier than 12 months.
Meanwhile, protests have taken place in the UK after the US Supreme Court ended the constitutional right to abortion in the United States. Events were held outside the American Embassy in London and the US Consulate in Edinburgh. Meanwhile, at Glastonbury, singer Billie Eilish described it as a dark day for women during her headline set.
A shooting at a nightclub in Norway's capital is being investigated as an act of terrorism. 2 people are dead, 14 wounded in the incident. 1 suspect is in custody. The shooting took place just hours before Oslo was due to hold its annual Pride Parade.
And the Ministry of Defence say Russian armoured units continue to make creeping gains in Severodonetsk. Intelligence chiefs also say President Putin has likely replaced several generals since the start of the war with Ukraine, including the commander of the airborne forces and the army general.
UK house prices continuing to rise, typical home now costing more than 7 times the average earnings. Research by Halifax found that since the start of the pandemic, house prices have risen by nearly 17%. Earnings have risen less than 3%. London is the most expensive place to buy, with the average property price £530,000.
Now, Boris Johnson, as we heard, is facing fresh opposition within his own party following the 2 by-election defeats in Tiverton and Honiton and Wakefield. Mr Johnson has admitted the results were not brilliant, but vowed to listen and learn. But this seems not to be enough for some in the Conservative Party who've already had fresh talks over making a move for new leadership. Under the rules of the 1922 Committee of Backbench Conservative MPs, Mr Johnson is safe from a further challenge for a year.
Yeah, well, joining us in the studio is Lembit Opik, former Lib Dem MP, and in Sheffield, former Labour advisor and associate editor of Labour Uncut, Kevin Meager. Good to see you both this morning. Lembit, from a sort of non-party political viewpoint, if you like, is this sustainable for the Prime Minister?
For any other Prime Minister, I'd say no. But Boris doesn't follow the rules. I wrongly predicted in this very studio in February that Boris was toast. He's still there. And he won the motion of confidence, although it's a bit technical why that happened. He is, at the moment, safe for 12 months. But that doesn't necessarily help the Conservatives, because the by-elections you referred to are unquestionably, in large part, a statement about people's views on Boris. And a lot of MPs in the Conservative Party will be very concerned about that, at the same time as the Lib Dems and Labour will be jubilating.
At the same time, he still has a massive majority, doesn't he, at the moment? So why would he make any fundamental changes?
Out of decency. His own party clearly want him to move on. Theresa May won her confidence motion by more than him, but still she left. Boris has more or less said he's going to stay there for whatever reason to do the job, but that's an interesting thing. What is the job he intends to do? He goes on about the environment. That is not Conservative policy comfortable territory. I don't think they're going to be winning any votes on that.
Well, to be fair, he hasn't said much about the environment recently, has he?
No, he hasn't, but he could, for example, take a more sympathetic position towards transport. He could say, well, we're going to actively go back into fossil fuels. Those would be radical policies at the moment in this situation where, as anybody who watches me regularly knows, I don't think there's a climate emergency. He could define himself like that. Instead, what we've got is this internal wrangle writ large across the whole of the UK, where we sit back and watch the Conservatives tearing themselves apart. What's going to happen? I'm not sure. But I would imagine Boris will never go voluntarily. They'll have to change the rules if they want to get rid of him in the next 12 months.
Kevin Meager, I mean, if there was a general election and obviously all guns are going to be blazing as far as the Labour Party is concerned, Keir Starmer busy telling us that there was a big enough swing in Wakefield to ensure, if that was replicated, a majority Labour government. It's not quite right, is it? I mean, there's clearly been some tactical voting here, some sort of, even if informal, Lib-Lab pact.
There has. I mean, these are two very interesting by-election results because, of course, they're in two very, very different parts of the country. You've got very kind of urban, northern, working-class Wakefield, and you've got Tiverton and Honiton, a classic kind of southwest seat where the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives have been competitive for a long number of years. But the Tories would regard pretty much as pretty safe territory for them. Now, what's happened on Thursday is that the Tories have lost the red wall, and they've lost the blue wall, potentially. Now, you know, to misquote Lady Bracknell, to lose one by-election and one wall is a misfortune. To lose two looks like carelessness. And I think that's going to be the charge levelled at Boris Johnson by his MPs over the next week or so, which is the kind of carelessness with which he governs as Prime Minister and governs their party. And now, you know, we're at that point in the Parliament where MPs, and, you know, and Lembit will know this far better than I, but MPs start to look towards the next election and say, am I going to win? Am I safe? Will I get back in again? And if the answer to that is no, or it's in real doubt, then MPs start to become very, very fractious. And this issue about the leadership just will not go away. Now, Boris Johnson is blessed at the moment because there is no obvious successor in the Conservative Party to step forward and kind of seize the crown. And that's probably the only thing that's keeping him in position at the moment. Because, I mean, I was very struck by his reaction. He's obviously at the Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit in Kigali, in Rwanda at the moment. Now, you know, they knew this by-election was happening. They know the Prime Minister's out of the country. You know, there needed to be a really sure response that says, we get the message, we get...
Oh,
it, and you know, here's some new policy, here's some clarification on the direction of the government. And Boris Johnson just didn't offer that the other day.
Well, I mean, what did you? I mean, he did say the results were not brilliant. It's not good enough, actually, is it?
It's classic Boris Johnson. I like Boris. I think of him as a friend. But my advice to Boris is, come on, wake up and smell the coffee here. He achieved a phenomenal result in the last general election. It really was largely down to his personality that so many Labour seats became Conservative. But he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. And Anne made this point earlier on. The reality is his personality isn't enough at this stage to get his party through. Millions of people, and some of the people who've written into the show today confirm this, millions of people still want Boris to be in charge. But it only takes a comparatively small swing for that to all change. Kevin's basically right. Politicians in the Conservative Party, the world's most successful electoral machine, will be making the sums now. What can happen?
And that's what it comes down to, mathematics, isn't it, really? I mean, they had an 80-seat majority. How many of those 80 seats could disappear just because people are fed up with Boris? Not all of them, probably.
Not all of them, but most of them probably will. I would imagine Kevin would agree the red wall is unsustainable with Boris Johnson's current level of popularity. Now, what's interesting is, and I've been very critical of my old party here, they did achieve a great result, which is probably bigger than just a by-election. I suspect the Tories could lose many of the seats that they snatched off the Lib Dems at the same time. So that further erodes the Conservative Party. I don't think Keir Starmer's done a great performance. All he has to do is keep his calm. And if Boris, for some weird reason, was still in charge in the next election, then he'll probably become Prime Minister. Maybe a minority government, maybe a majority. But the Tories know this. His outside distance is 11 months from now. I think Boris can't go beyond then. They might be able to push him out before then, but that will be an awful lot of blood spilled.
But who do the Conservatives think that they could get who is better than the Prime Minister? I mean, look, there may be better politicians, better statisticians and strategists and all the rest of it who you know, would do a better job in that sense. But in terms of winning over the vote, if he pulls tax cuts and cost of living stuff out of the hat in the next 12 months...
And makes a few good speeches.
He could be the one person who could get them to win.
Possibly, but I know this. I was leader of the Welsh Lib Dems, and then I went on to lose my seat in 2010. And I felt it might happen. But I made mistakes, and this authorises me, I think, to comment about Boris's position, which were not dissimilar to his own. And I couldn't pull it back. Well, I misinterpreted the level to which my relationships and things which weren't directly related to politics influenced people's view of me. Now, the same thing's happening to Boris Johnson. You could say the Partygate doesn't directly affect his ability to be the Prime Minister. But then I've mentioned the green agenda. I don't think that's helping him very much. We've got sky-high fuel prices. We've got a cost of living problems. And if you were to say, what does Boris actually stand for? A lot of Tories go, well, he's a good old boy, but we don't really understand what he stands for. So if he ignores the lessons of my history, he could go the same way. And that's a really bad thing for the Tories. They won't let that happen.
I was going to say, what do you think of the fact that, I mean, I don't know, but I've sensed a lot of resentment from the idea that there are 2 millionaires in Downing Street at the moment, Boris and Rishi Sunak. And there's a story in today's papers that Boris was going to build a £50,000 treehouse. £150,000 treehouse, sorry, yes, for Wilf, his little boy?
His son.
Wilfred, yeah.
Yeah, in the garden at Chequers. And in the end, it was the police who talked him out of it. But he was going to do that with Tory donors' money.
OK, but that's...
You know, what I mean is that sort of thing, again, you were talking about, that sort of thing builds up resentment.
That irritates Conservatives. But actually, once again, many of your viewers will say, we don't really care about that. We don't really care about the parties. But we don't feel good about Boris anymore. And once again, they're not all going to move away, but elections are a margin call. You move 10% one way or the other, you win or lose. That's the problem the Tories have here. Now, the Lib Dems will be very pleased with their result. They'll be wanting to bite at those seats that they lost to the Tories. Everyone in the Conservatives know this. Even his friends know this.
Are the Lib Dems still a protest vote? In the sense that, I mean, look, Ed Davey is... I mean, when did he become leader? Just before the pandemic or something like that? And I think I've interviewed him once in that time. I mean, the Lib Dems have just disappeared.
Except when it comes to locally.
Local, they do well.
Local elections, they do quite well.
But they can't replicate that right across the whole
Yeah,
country, can they?
the 30-second history of the Lib Dems, I could see Nick Clegg was going to wreck the party. He did. I ended up being ostracised, even though I turned out to be right. I shared an office with Ed Davey for quite a few years. He's a decent guy, but he's having real trouble getting that traction, as you've suggested. The Lib Dems my advice to the Lib Dems is what they always do well: make it local, turn it into constituency seats. But that's not enough. The Tories have to be doing badly. And that's the perfect storm, which the Tories can see. Lib Dems just have to perform quite well. I think the gain in that by-election is so big, it does suggest a lift, a protest vote against the Tories. You asked who could take over from Boris Johnson. I think the three favourites are Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss, and actually Rishi Sunak might still be in there with Jeremy Hunt also. And I know you're wincing, but none of them are going to be declaring their status, their claim, until there's obviously an election.
So
you can bet your bottom dollar they've all got their campaigns running.
Oh, I could keep talking, but I'm being yelled at.
I'm sorry.
My ear. We're out of time.
You heard it first from
Yeah, no, look, really good to see you. Lembit Opik, and earlier talking to Kevin Meager from Labour Uncut.
Yeah, more to come, of course, including we're going to be meeting the Young Engineer of the Year.
Good morning, I'm Helen Roberts with your weather update, and this weekend is looking rather changeable, certainly in comparison with some recent days over the past week or so, and it's all thanks to this area of low pressure, very slow moving, and it's with us right the way through the course of this weekend. Initially introducing this cold front, which will actually bring some better nights if you've been struggling to sleep with the humidity over recent nights, feeling a little bit cooler and fresher than it has done. So for Saturday, we start on quite a bright note, but quickly these rash of showers developing, particularly across western parts of the country. Some of those will be heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. The best chance of seeing drier and brighter weather throughout the day is across East Anglia and the southeast of England. And this is also where we'll tend to get the higher temperatures into the low 20s. So feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine. But it is looking changeable, and there's yet more cloud and rain swinging in from the west through the course of tonight and into the start of Sunday. This will be a band of slightly more persistent rain as we head into the early hours of Sunday morning. As I mentioned, feeling a little bit fresher than it has done over some recent nights, but still not cool by any stretch. So we start Sunday again with some bright spells, particularly across the eastern side of the UK, but quite a lot of cloud already piling up across western areas, and further showers or perhaps longer spells of rain. And again, they could be heavy and possibly thundery at times. Still, the best chance of drier and brighter conditions is across the southeast corner of the UK, and again, temperatures here just about climbing into the low 20s given that sunshine. And there's really no significant change as we head into the early part of next week, certainly staying on the changeable side with further showers, which will be heavy at times, but occasional bright or sunny spells too.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.33, a very good morning to you. You're watching GB, whatever it is.
Breakfast.
Thank you, with Stephen and Anne.
A bit of brain fog. It feels like that sometimes at this time of day.
It does, actually. Welcome back. Anyway, you're watching and listening to us this morning. And do stay with us because we've got plenty more to come. We're going to meet the Young Engineer of the Year as well.
Yes.
But first of all, we're going to go through the papers.
Yeah, because she's actually created some fabulous CO2 measuring device thing, which is all it's very clever, and she's young, and she's...
And that's brilliant. And she's a she as well, which is great.
Which is really
important. For so many years, they've been really campaigning to try and get girls in school really interested in practical science,
STEM.
Engineering. Yes, it is STEM.
STEM,
isn't it?
yeah.
That's brilliant. Anyway, we're meeting her soon.
Excellent. Look forward to that. Let's take you through the papers. The Mail leads on Sajid Javid's pushback against an alleged anti-Tory election pact between the Lib Dems and Labour.
The Times leads on Boris's increasingly unstable position, they call it, within the Conservative Party, following that series of high-profile election embarrassments.
The Eye covers a Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, making abortion illegal in several US states.
And the Telegraph leads on the news that Tory dissenters are plotting to remove the Prime Minister.
For the Express, a more optimistic view towards the PM's fortunes, saying that he intends to fight the next general election as Tory leader.
And the Times leads on Boris's... Oh, no, it doesn't. That's the Times. Yes, we've just done the Times already, though, haven't we? So shall we go through what's inside the papers? Joining us is Baroness of Buckley, Claire Fox, and CEO of PLMR, Kevin Craig. Lovely to see you again.
Let's talk election plot in the Mail, Kevin.
I think this is a very important front page to talk about briefly, because the Daily Mail remains one of our top 5 national newspapers, hugely influential. Millions of people read it. And I think we have to be very clear. The front page today, where Sajid Javid is calling out, tell the truth about secret anti-Tory pacts. This is a total ruse by both...
What, so there wasn't a pact?
Well, the thing is, it's a non-story, right? Because the story should say political parties divert resources and effort where they think they're going to win.
That's not quite a catchy headline.
Well, but that, I know it's not, Stephen. Fair point. But back in 2019, the Daily Mail did not get upset when there was basically an arrangement between the Brexit Party and the Conservative Party. Understandably, they wanted to do the best. So they did. And they didn't fight in some areas where if they fought strongly, they'd cancel each other out.
All right, here's one for you then. So you're acknowledging, I mean, all of our guests basically this morning have acknowledged that there was some sort of agreement. I mean, not a formal agreement.
Common sense campaigning.
All right, then why did John Healey, Shadow Defence Secretary, deny it?
Well,
because it's the transparency that upset people.
There's no formal pact. I mean, what he didn't deny was that there's common sense in play. Of course, political parties are not going to... I was in Wakefield. The Lib Dems were nowhere, and Labour know that they don't win at those rural seats like that. Common sense. Why is it front page in one of our most popular newspapers, Stephen?
Well, I think people need to know, don't they?
Know what?
No, that this happened.
But it's really obvious, isn't it? It's just fascinating that the Daily Mail have made it front page because someone Sajid's team briefed them.
I'd get your point if John Healey hadn't said, no, we put up a candidate, we campaigned there, we did... When even as you're saying, as someone who's a Labour campaigner, even you're saying, well, of course, they put up a candidate, but they didn't campaign there. They didn't expect to win it, despite the fact they came second last time in Tiverton and Honiton.
Right. Well, let's make it very clear for all the listeners and viewers, the political parties, Labour and Lib Dems, are savvy these days. They're not going to cancel each other out.
Right. It's not a great look, in my opinion. First of all, to treat the public as mugs. So what you've said is perfectly reasonable, but I just wish that other people would be as open. But the second thing for me is, forget all that. I don't care that that's going on. If the only thing you've got going for you is an anti-Toryism, then what does it say about your own vision?
It would be terrible, Claire, if it was the case.
No, but what I want to know is, what do both of those parties stand for? And I think that's what the electorate deserves. So what's happened is, you can play on a certain demoralisation of Tory voters. It doesn't take a lot with Boris Johnson at the helm. We know that. There's a problem. But if then what you become is simply the anti-Tory bloc, the least worst, and you're kind of doing these arrangements, I think that's demoralising and diminishing of political life, because what I am shocked about, genuinely, is with the Tories being in this state, that we haven't had a really fantastic, amazing opposition visions shining through. And it hasn't happened, right?
It's coming through, though.
No, I don't think so. I mean, only a year ago, we've got to remember that Hartlepool, for example, you know, the Tories won it, right? And that red wall is not collapsing because of what happened in Wakefield, a particularly unpleasant episode with the Tory candidate. Absolutely no fight in that. You know, a disgraceful contempt Wakefield voters by the Tory party, by the way, but with who they stood and with not bothering campaigning there. I get all that. But what I want to see is an opposition that's got some political life to it, that offers some vision.
Do you want the old revolutionary communists back, like the old days, like you used to be?
Yeah, no, but that's so many decades ago that we could refer to our past. No, because they died in 1997, which is why referring back to them is an unhelpful vision. I'm talking about a vision for now. And there's a political realignment going on that I don't think any of the parties have quite captured. One of the problems with the Conservative Party is surely that it's in a situation where it's trying to represent the Red Wall and the Shires, doesn't know how to do it. What I'm suggesting is that what did you call it? Common sense, Liberal and Labour kind of unity would indicate that they haven't, either of them, got sufficient heft to their own vision to be able to win on their own terms. That's my view.
Talking of political realignment, can we go to, Claire, to the Eye and their coverage of the abortion overturning of Roe v Wade in the States?
Yeah, I mean, I think the headline here in the Eye is misleading when it says that abortion is banned in the US, because that's not really what's happened. However, it is the case that women's rights have been set back by this decision. There's a constitutional difficulty, which is that the Supreme Court's decision originally did give constitutional rights to women to have access to abortion. And now, by putting it back onto states, it means that, because we know a number of states have already declared, that women in, I think it's 22 states in America, will now not have the right to control of their reproductive lives, basically. And this is very frightening for a lot of women. Of course it is. One of the things that's really tricky with the issue of abortion, though, particularly in American terms, it's become part of a kind of culture war. So rather than us being able to discuss sensibly the issue of women's rights, why abortion is a necessary requirement for women to have equality in society, even if they don't all have abortions, the right to be able to terminate pregnancy is an essential right for women in order to be treated equally. The problem is that it's become a whose side are you on in an unhelpful way.
A religious war as well.
A religious war, although, you know, I know I'm always kind of... That's true, but I'm always slightly anxious because I defend religious freedom, and if people are religious... And there's moral arguments to be had about abortion. I understand, you know, there will be people who will say, morally, I'm opposed to it. All I'm saying is I think it should be right. It's a medical procedure that is required by women in order to have control of their reproductive... with their own bodies. I mean, that's effectively it. And so it's a major decision, but it's also not helped by this culture wars atmosphere in relation to it, where you're not discussing it rationally. It becomes a kind of whose side are you on?
Well, even down to the fact that the justices who made the decision in the last couple of days have to interpret the law around it. And their interpretation is that the Constitution doesn't actually give women the right to abortion. The word abortion doesn't appear in the Constitution.
No, that's right.
To which the women point out the word woman doesn't appear in the Constitution either. Can you go on creating law with something that was written 200 years ago.
So just one final bit, which is one of the aspects of the culture war that's confused in this is, of course, that in America in particular, but it's obviously true here, is that we're not clear what a woman is.
No.
So in the meantime, you've got this stupid row that's going on amongst some of the NGOs in America who are basically saying LGBTQ+ and women need the right to abortion. You think, oh, don't confuse us with that one. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't know where we're going. This is a fundamental woman's right, which I think needs to be fought for. I really hope that this does not come into the UK in terms of the culture war aspect of it.
Yes.
And in fact, the liberalised atmosphere around abortion in this country has made it almost like a depoliticised issue, which is exactly what it should be. That's it.
Yeah. OK, look, let's move on to something, I was going to say a bit lighter. It's a bit irritating. If you want a lovely, romantic, quiet meal, Kevin, then according to The Guardian, you shouldn't go to London.
Well, no, it's a really interesting piece on page 19 of The Guardian, just about a survey done by a noise app, which has identified that the restaurants in London are ranked the loudest in Europe. I was worried about discussing this, about the risk of coming across as an old fogey, Stephen. You see, this is the problem, because I think what this story reflects is that younger people are not bothered about the noise when they go out and have a meal. It's all part of the buzz. And I think, like you might have said earlier...
hear better.
Well, indeed. Whereas people...
You find it noisy going to restaurants.
Yeah,
I do.
I don't like it.
Yeah, people of a certain
You don't like
vintage...
it.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, if you're with a table of people
Yeah.
and you say, sorry, I didn't hear that, can I just say that again? They go, oh, never mind.
Look, I know all that, that's true. But honestly, after lockdown, I can't tell you how exciting it is to hear a bit of buzz in restaurants, right? I mean, it was very weird, because once when, there was like brief bits where the pubs had opened, you were allowed to sit with 1.5 people or something, according to the guidelines. And I remember going in, and there was some other people next door, and they were talking, and I couldn't hear. And I thought, I've got so used to hearing nothing and nobody that I've kind of become an old person before my time, even though I am an old person. Anyway, I, of course, would prefer it wasn't quite so noisy, but actually I want to celebrate the buzz. Yeah. I want the restaurants to be loud. I want young people to be out having great times and creating...
Have you ever tried doing that? Because it immediately improves your hearing.
No,
so I thought, I'm going to have to ask for Christmas. I'm going to have to ask for an eardrum.
Well,
they're all the rage. We're out of time. Yeah. But no, I said it should be all the rage.
They should be all the rage.
No, yeah, exactly.
I wanted to do my schools banning hugging story. So if you... I don't know, but it's terrible what's going on.
One sentence? Can you do it in one sentence?
Some schools have said that you're not allowed to... People shouldn't hug each other because it's inappropriate touching, and the world's gone mad.
I quite agree.
Ridiculous.
I love a hug.
Well, it's reassuring. You've got to learn how to communicate with people.
Of course you have.
Yeah. And that was another lockdown loss, wasn't it? We told we couldn't hug people. Yeah. I want a lot more hugging for young people amongst each other.
And older people too.
Yeah.
Especially the newly married.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of hugging at home, don't you worry about that.
Oh, boasting.
Kevin, Claire, thank you very much indeed. Lots more still to come for you, including we're going to meet the Young Engineer of the Year.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, this is the perfect story because me and Anne are geeks, aren't we?
Yes.
We love our science. And if your son or daughter is a keen scientist, perhaps they're struggling a little bit to get encouragement in the field. Well, there's a new UK scheme hoping to reward the next generation of scientists, engineers and inventors.
It's called the Big Bang UK Young Scientists and Engineers Competition, and it aims to recognise and reward young people's achievements in all areas of science.
Well, today we are delighted to welcome the 2022 Young Engineer of the Year, Avi Kulut, who joins us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Why, first and foremost, why have you been interested in science?
So I've been interested in kind of science, technology, engineering and maths from kind of like a young age of just going along to different events and like the Science Museum and different technology workshops and events. And from gradually going to all these different events, I've just been really interested in my knowledge and passion and interest has just grown and grown and grown.
Wow.
How old are you now?
I'm 14 now in year 9.
Congratulations again.
So
you've brought in this amazing thing.
What is
You're
it?
going to have to explain to us, please.
So this is my pavilion, which I entered for the Big Bang competition. And basically it's an air quality project. So it reacts to the CO2 levels inside the pavilion. So it's a scaled down model of what a real life-size pavilion could be. And my aim for it is to be installed into different locations to provide space and healthy indoor air quality solutions. Yeah.
So what? So it measures the CO2 in the air and then does what?
So it measures the CO2 levels inside the pavilion, and depending on whether they're high or low, features around the pavilion will activate. So, for example, at the front, there's a front shutter wall, there's a sliding skylight on the top.
Which is what we can hear. Is that what we can hear?
Yeah, that's what you can hear right now. And then at the back is the back shutter wall, which also opens and closes as well.
Fantastic.
So this would be a great big life-size place?
Yeah, that's the aim, yeah.
Yeah, but it's the environment would all be sort of automatically controlled.
Yeah.
At least for air quality. So you've got some plants there, but you might imagine big trees and enormous floral arrangements and things like that. Yeah. And the idea is to keep the air quality good for humans or plants?
So humans, so the users who would actually be using the space inside the pavilion, yeah.
Right. I mean, look, in all of this, I mean, it's a great idea, but what about the technology behind it? It's one thing to come up with an idea to say, yes, we need to do so, and it will automatically regulate it with these openings and shutters and what have you. But how did you get your head around the technology needed to detect CO2 in this sort of way?
So obviously, as you said, you have to think about the idea. So after the idea, I started thinking what functions did I actually want to happen around the pavilion. So I started thinking about opening and closing mechanisms. So that got me to think about using different types of motors. And then motors obviously need to be programmed. So I used something called CircuitPython, which I used to program all the different electronic components around the pavilion. So
you've got a little readout here.
Yeah.
And that's giving you a readout of different parts of the pavilion and what their levels are.
Yeah, so at the top, you might not be able to see it, but it's got these CO2 levels, and then it goes down to added features like temperature, humidity, and like the battery level.
So there's a little computer in here somewhere?
Yeah, there's a microcontroller in there.
A microcontroller, which you have programmed?
Yeah.
And where are the sensors? Are they in?
So the sensors are actually inside. So the CO2 sensor is what picks up, obviously, the CO2, and that's what triggers everything to react depending on whether it's high or low enough.
What does surprise mean to you, then? I don't know what, in terms of, I don't know if you get money or scholarships or whatever, but in terms of encouragement that it gives you to move forward?
I would definitely say that the winning the Big Bang Young Engineer of the Year awards definitely empowered me to keep going and to keep getting myself involved in making these different projects and immersing myself in different STEM-based subjects and to potentially go on to have a career in STEM as well. So I definitely say it's given me a really big platform, and it's given me kind of the encouragement to speak about my project and to get involved in other cool projects and ideas that I think of later on as well.
What are you working on at the moment?
So at the moment, I have my organisation called Girls into Coding, where I...
Girls into Coding?
Yeah, where I engage girls and they come along to events and different workshops and events, and they get involved in different STEM-based activities. So one thing I would definitely like to work on is transferring the pavilion into an even more scaled-down model to be actually able to use at my events as well. So kind of used as an educational tool to other young people.
See, one day that could be a dome, not a pavilion, and it could be
maybe.
on the moon or Mars or something, couldn't it? A controlled environment.
You wouldn't want to open the windows on the...
Well, you wouldn't open the windows, no, you'd have to control it.
I tell you what, though...
Inside a dome.
It is hugely impressive,
It
and
really
you are hugely impressive, and a nice, confident young lady.
Yeah, it
looks
does.
fab.
It's fantastic. It is really good to meet you. Congratulations,
Thank you so much.
Spread the word. Go on spreading the word about girls in engineering, because it can be done, and it's obviously being done. Brilliant.
Oh, love that. So clever. Now, we've just got time to head down to Glastonbury for you this morning, catch up on the very latest entertainment news. Queen Stephanie is there. Morning, Stephanie. I thought for a second you were camped outside the Portaloos.
Oh, my gosh, I can't stand the smell of the Portaloos. I would be sick instantly.
Where are you then? What are you up to today?
Okay, so today is obviously the second day of live performances, so I am getting ready to see Diana Ross, Paul McCartney, you name it, all of the best acts I'm looking forward to seeing today. Today is just going to be another stellar day like yesterday was. Yesterday we had Billie Eilish take to the Pyramid stage, and she made history by being the youngest performer to ever perform and headline on stage at the Pyramid.
Was it a good show, Steph?
Oh my gosh, it was fantastic. It was well entertaining, but also Billie used the stage to make a point about politics yesterday, because yesterday obviously we had the overruling of the Roe versus Wade, and she said it was a very dark day in history for US women, knowing that their abortion rights have been taken away from them. And she performed this song called Your Power, which is talking about people in positions abusing their power. So she made some really strong political statements last night, and it was just so well entertaining. She done justice.
Tell you what, quite apart from the music, the people watching is absolutely fascinating at Glastonbury, isn't it? I mean, I'm just watching the people walking behind you. It must be interesting just looking at people.
I've seen so many cool outfits. It's been so amazing. Like, I've been seeing youngsters all dolled up. We've seen older people dressed up. Like, everyone has really made an effort for this Glastonbury. It's just really been about peace, love, happiness, and pure Glasgow vibes. So it's been incredible. And literally, we've got another day to go. So there's so much more to happen.
Tell me, Steph, about Diana Ross, because I know there's some great stuff. Paul McCartney tonight is going to be sensational. But seeing Diana Ross perform must be just phenomenal. What time does she kick off?
She's going to be coming on at 1:15, so she's also going to be on the Pyramid stage, but she's going to be doing the Legends slot, which is always an iconic set to have. It's all of the best performers from back in the day singing their heart out, and she's already been doing the rounds in the UK, so I know it's going to be another awesome set, and I literally can't wait to hear her perform. I'm coming out, and I literally cannot wait.
And then Paul McCartney comes on when?
So Paul McCartney will be coming on tonight at 10:15. He's going to be having an hour and a half set. He's going to have an hour and a half set, so I imagine he's going to have some goodies, some entertainment for us. I'm just hoping that he brings on some other guests on stage. There are some rumours that he is going to be doing a virtual performance with John Lennon, so I would like to see that come to life.
Oh, yeah, that will be sensational. Look, Steph, enjoy. But I tell you what, don't enjoy too much because we're going to catch up with you in 45 minutes along with Aidan. So we'll see you then.
Oh, I can't wait.
Steph, thank you. Oh, she's having a good... Do you know what I love about Steph is she's just having a good time.
She is, yes, but she sort of embraces us all into it.
Oh, I love it.
That would be amazing, watching Paul McCartney with John Lennon somehow.
Will be quite something. Look, stay with us. We've got all your top stories coming up in just a minute.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices. With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Off the rails, another day of strike action will affect train services across much of the country today.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Saturday the 25th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the UK on your TV, your radio and globally online, so wherever you are, actually, in the world, you can take us with you. This is what you're waking up to today.
Today, members of the RMT union staged their third 24-hour strike this week in a dispute over jobs, pay and working conditions. It means only a fifth of rail services will run today, so please do check before you travel. And we're asking you whether you think the country is still holding it together despite the strikes.
The Prime Minister met Prince Charles in Rwanda yesterday. Boris Johnson said they had a good old chinwag after the Prince of Wales reportedly criticised his asylum policy to send refugees to the country.
In the United States, the constitutional right to abortion has been scrapped. Protections that have been in place for nearly 50 years were overturned in the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling, and it now means that individual states can decide whether they want to ban abortion outright. The decision has seen widespread condemnation.
Would love to hear from you this morning about any of the things we're talking about, or even just to say hello and let us know where you are. So give us something to smile about this morning, because some of the news is a little bit on the heavy side.
Yeah, it was lovely to hear earlier from one of our viewers who was having lunch in Mauritius as they watched us. Lovely. So if you're watching from somewhere wonderful, make us jealous. And even take a photograph and send it in. That's gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, are you planning to catch a train today? Well,
you may want to think again.
I think it's a case if you are thinking of going, surely anyone thinking of getting a train today isn't just going to risk it for a biscuit, because it's not worth it, is it?
No, but if you really need to get somewhere, and it is Armed Forces Day today, I mean, if you were hoping to get somewhere so that you could take part in a parade or just watch something going on to do with Armed Forces Day, maybe you'll have to rethink your plans. Drive instead. It was amazing how many people during the week chose not to drive instead. We were expecting massive sort of motorway build-ups and everything. That didn't happen because a lot of people chose clearly to work from home. Not everyone can do that, though.
I wonder if Tuesday was the tester, because I had to drive Tuesday morning to come here for a meeting, and it was horrific.
Really?
It was horrific.
How long did it take you?
It took me 3.5 hours.
To do a journey that normally
takes an hour and a quarter. It was really,
What, were you
really
just
bad.
stuck in traffic jams the whole time?
Absolutely dreadful.
Oh.
And so I wonder if people did that, had a taste of it, and then
thought,
just said,
I can't face that again.
Can't do it.
And the fact is that it is 3 days of striking, but the effect of a strike, particularly because you're moving trains around the country, effectively meant that the day in between the strikes was also affected. So even though the union may well have called it a 3-day strike, it was actually a whole week of chaos, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, well, it was. But interestingly, do you support these strikes or not? Because one of the things, we're talking to the former Assistant General Secretary of the RMT, which, of course, holding the majority of these strikes, so ASLEF are involved in some as well, and saying the problem is, because you can get a bit annoyed saying, well, everyone's taken a pay cut in real terms because of inflation. Everyone's struggling, or the vast majority of people are struggling. So why do you have the right to strike when it's affecting everybody else? But one of the points he made, which I wonder if resonates with you, is the fact that bosses at a lot of these rail companies who earn a lot of money, which I don't have an issue with. I think bosses probably deserve to earn a lot of money, how they've got in that position.
And investors deserve their dividends to a certain extent.
Yes, I think that's right. But they had taken a pay rise recently. So they've had a significant pay rise, and yet the workers on the front line, who are earning obviously a lot less, aren't getting one.
And a lot of the investors and a lot of the people at the very, very top of companies did take their big dividends, massive dividends. And maybe that should have been the time. A bit of forethought might have actually thought, this is the time to cap that, surely, at the time.
So, what do you think? And I do wonder if you've got sympathy with the strikers, which you may well do, will that sympathy last if there's no resolution and this goes on for
it escalates,
weeks and weeks and weeks?
Which it could, and other unions and other workforces joining in. I mean, it's what they call a summer of discontent. It would be far worse than that, actually, if it ruins everybody's summer holidays, wouldn't it?
Interestingly, when we were talking yesterday about the strikes which are being planned by British Airways staff at Heathrow, someone emailed in to say, I don't support the rail strike, but I do support that particular strike because that was all about a 10% pay reduction which was made during all the COVID stuff. And it was about having that reinstated. It wasn't about a pay rise.
It was just about reinstating.
And yet the bosses had theirs reinstated, but the frontline workers hadn't.
Not right, is it, somehow?
So let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, something else you may feel is not right. On the other hand, it actually divides opinion, even in this country, is the US Supreme Court, which voted to overturn the constitutional right to choose abortion. The ruling ends nearly 50 years of legal protection for terminations in America.
Now, the power to decide on abortion rights for tens of millions of women is not going to be lost entirely, but it's going to be taken away from being a federal law, so it was available across the whole country. It will be now handed to individual states, those individual 50 states, to determine whether or not they will allow abortion. Now, speaking yesterday, President Biden condemned that decision, saying it puts women at risk.
Roe gone. Let's be very clear. The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. State laws banning abortion are automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women some without exceptions. So extreme that women could be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls were forced to bear their rapist's child.
Well, earlier on the programme today, we spoke to Sarah Elliott from Republicans Overseas UK on that Supreme Court ruling.
I welcome this because it's actually back to democracy. It's putting this issue that was decided by 9 Supreme Court judges back to the people where it should have been decided before. One of the reasons why this issue is so hotly contested in the United States is that it wasn't decided by the people through the democratic process of the legislatures. And now it will be. And it will go to the states where those states will be able to reflect the will and the views of the people who live there. And, you know, for 50 years, there's absolutely been no way that states can restrict abortion. So actually our abortion legislation is quite radical in the United States. You know, Kamala Harris, our vice president, you know, believes you can have one up to 38 weeks. You know, places like California, New York, and Virginia were saying that if a baby survives an abortion, we can deny it care. So these are all things that are quite out of step with mainstream Americans. And what you're going to find is actually America's going to look a lot more like Britain and Europe on abortion.
In what way?
You can have an abortion on demand.
I'm sorry?
In Britain, you can have an abortion on demand.
Up to 24 weeks.
Yes.
You can go full term.
This ruling isn't about 24 weeks. This ruling is basically saying that in some states there will be no abortion.
That's because those people believe life begins at conception or after a heartbeat. I mean, for me, as a pro-life woman, I find that this protects life from the beginning of conception because I believe it's still a human being when a unique genetic code is formed. And these are defenseless, vulnerable, voiceless humans in the womb that can't defend themselves.
In some cases, so are the mothers, defenseless,
yes.
voiceless, and human.
Well, and I believe that actually abortion is not actually good for women. There are a lot of side effects to abortion that are not discussed. You know, depression, drug abuse that follows, you know, such a procedure. I mean, it's actually, I think that this is a great argument for the community to come and support the woman in her decision. And everyone should have a chance at life.
She doesn't have a decision, though, does she? You say support the woman in her decision, but in many cases she won't have the decision. She'll have to go ahead with the pregnancy, whether she likes it or not.
Or she can go to another state, because guess what?
If she's got the money to go to another state, if she's got the freedom to travel, if she's a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old girl who's suddenly found herself pregnant by accident or maybe even by rape, she's not going to be free to be able to travel, to move, to take the time off.
Well, of the 63 million abortions of the last 50 years, about 0.5% are incest or rape. This has been used over the last 50 years as a form of contraception.
Oh,
which
please.
A lot of
Are you
people,
honestly suggesting some women see it as a form of contraception?
Absolutely.
Are you honestly saying to me that some women take this decision to have an abortion sort of glibly?
I think it runs the spectrum, but there are people who do it multiple times for that very reason. They absolutely have confessed it. You look at the pro-choice supporters out there, they are proud of it. Let me tell you, this is a moral issue.
Some are.
Yeah, and it is and you know what this does actually is it starts the conversation is when does human life begin? And this is a serious decision. And actually the women's lives are extremely important. This is not anti-woman. This is pro-women. This is talking about how can we help women have protections. This is, and also, you know, most Americans, 13% of women actually, don't agree with third-term abortions, right? So actually, 2 out of 3 Americans actually want restrictions on abortion after 20 weeks. So you're just going to see, actually, Americans' laws reflect that of Europe. 13 states at the moment have passed trigger laws, so which in the next 30 days, they will ban abortions, but you're going to see places like California and Colorado where you'll be able to do it all the way up to birth. And then there'll be places where they say if you hear a heartbeat, you can't have one, which actually, with the development of technology and coupled with the extreme position of the left in America on this issue, they are changing the dialogue. The conversation is changing.
I mean, clearly it's always good to have the conversation, but the conversation's always been there in the States, hasn't it? Abortion has always been incredibly contentious issue.
And I think it's because you had 9 Supreme Court judges decide this for the entire country.
Yeah, but we've just had 9 we've just had 6 Supreme Court
who's
judges
actually putting it back to the states to say, you decide. I'm a woman. I don't want to see women suffer. And there have been tons of suffering from this whole issue. And now we can take a step back. I think the heat kind of goes down a bit. We go down into the subsidiarity, into our federal system, and let it play out there.
And that was Sarah Elliott from Republicans Overseas UK.
Any views on that? Let us know. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines at 12 minutes past 9, and only a fifth of train services are going to run today. Yes, there's another 24-hour strike by thousands of rail workers. Members of the RMT have walked out for the 3rd time this week in that dispute over jobs, pay and conditions.
A shooting at a nightclub in Norway's capital, Oslo, is being investigated as an act of terrorism. 2 people are dead and 14 have been wounded in the incident. 1 suspect in custody. The shooting took place just hours before Oslo is due to hold its annual Pride Parade.
Boris Johnson says the economic consequences of Russia's war could force Ukraine to agree a peace deal that's not in its interests. His comments come as the Ministry of Defence said Russian armoured units continue to make creeping gains in Severodonetsk.
Sir Paul McCartney is going to make history later when he becomes Glastonbury Festival's oldest solo headliner. The former Beatle will take to the stage exactly 1 week after celebrating his 80th birthday.
Now, the Prime Minister has met the Prince of Wales at CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali.
The details of their meeting remain unclear, but follows private comments by Prince Charles, where he reportedly called the government's policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda appalling.
Well, the Home Secretary says that they will resume plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing, despite the European Court of Human Rights last-minute ruling, which blocked that initial flight.
Well, let's find out a bit more on this, the meeting with the Prince of Wales and everything else that's on the agenda. Let's speak to GB News' political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who is in Rwanda. Hello there, Darren. Hi.
Yeah, very good morning to you both.
Oh, there's quite a delay, Darren. Tell us what's going on there at the moment and how have things been for you? Is it your first time, for instance, in Rwanda?
Yeah, it is indeed, it must be said, Anne, and very impressive, actually, in many regards. I think people have got preconceptions, misconceptions maybe about Rwanda, but it is clear that this is a place that is determined in many regards to be welcoming, to signify that it is open to migrants from across the world to potentially move here, and they're very proud of their city and their country as a welcoming place. Though it must be said, I've just spent the last 30 minutes with the Prime Minister and the journalists, the other journalists that are following him around at the ambassador's residence here in Kigali. Unsurprisingly, most of the questions that the Prime Minister was kind of batting away and having to field were on leadership and whether he will carry on being Prime Minister in the wake of those 2 by-election defeats yesterday and the resignation of Oliver Dowden. Prime Minister repeatedly insisted he would carry on, that he wanted to focus on, he believes, the issues that matter to the public, cost of living crisis, the rising cost of fuel, the migrant crisis that we're seeing in the English Channel, and that people should focus a bit less on the things that he says where people might think he's stuffed up, that in the end he wants to focus on people's priorities and that he's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, that he's determined to carry on as Prime Minister. Perhaps unsurprising, but it is fair to say that while he is here in Rwanda, things are pretty tricky, aren't they, politically back home for him. He was asked about that in that meeting with Prince Charles yesterday, though as always in these circumstances, Anne, as you know, Prime Ministers and conversations with the members of the royal family always remain secret. He would not be drawn on that. We don't think in the end actually this issue of Rwandan and the migrant situation was brought up between the two. And also, just to add to all of this, there were lots and lots of other questions about the Prime Minister's role here in Rwanda, what he's actually doing, because you have to remember he is at a Commonwealth summit And this afternoon he's going to go away essentially with the other leaders, the other kind of 50 leaders essentially, to a retreat just outside the city. Just the leaders, no aides. We're going to talk an awful lot about kind of the big global issues, not least of all what's happening with Ukraine and this desire to try and see lots of the grain, lots of the food that's been held in the ports of Ukraine, to try and get that released. Because clearly rising massive food prices is a big issue in sub-Saharan Africa. We've seen a massive spike in the cost of grain that has an impact on the cost of everyday goods here. And I think there's a determination from the Prime Minister to try and get Commonwealth leaders, and he's going to move on to the G7 later on tonight in Germany, and then to NATO next week in Madrid, to try and see if there is a way to get that food from those ports in Odessa and elsewhere in Ukraine out of the Black Sea and to the rest of the world. But ultimately, while the Prime Minister does want to focus on those big global issues, frankly, a lot of his time, and let's be perfectly honest about this, a lot of his time is focused on those really difficult domestic troubles and whether he can get through not just the next couple of days, but the next couple of weeks and months as Prime Minister.
Darren, thank you very much indeed. It's not a good time to be out of the country, is it really?
Good to see you, though, there in Rwanda, being able to see for yourself a bit earlier on in the programme. We played Darren's report on the hostel or hotel where it is mooted that the migrants that we fly out, if we ever do, to Rwanda will stay.
The Hope Hostel, it was called.
Hope Hostel, is that right?
Hope Hostel. And I have to say, I mean, as far as accommodation goes, it looked pretty good.
It did look good, yeah.
And better than some of these. You see some of the reports that we've had over here, of especially in a lot of the seaside towns. Well, some of the sort of third-rate hotels that they're staying in, where it looks grim, these seems a lot better. But doesn't mean people want to go there.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look,
we'll see if a flight ever makes it off the tarmac.
Yeah. In a moment, we're going to hit the streets of London to see how the third rail strike of the week is affecting journeys in the capital today.
Good morning, I'm Helen Roberts with your weather update, and this weekend is looking rather changeable, certainly in comparison with some recent days over the past week or so, and it's all thanks to this area of low pressure, very slow moving, and it's with us right the way through the course of this weekend. Initially introducing this cold front, which will actually bring some better nights if you've been struggling to sleep with the humidity over recent nights, feeling a little bit cooler and fresher than it has done. So for Saturday, we start on quite a bright note, but quickly these rash of showers developing, particularly across western parts of the country. Some of those will be heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. The best chance of seeing drier and brighter weather throughout the day is across East Anglia and the southeast of England. And this is also where we'll tend to get the higher temperatures into the low 20s. So feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine. But it is looking changeable, and there's yet more cloud and rain swinging in from the west through the course of tonight and into the start of Sunday. This will be a band of slightly more persistent rain as we head into the early hours of Sunday morning. As I mentioned, feeling a little bit fresher than it has done over some recent nights, but still not cool by any stretch. So we start Sunday again with some bright spells, particularly across the eastern side of the UK, but quite a lot of cloud already piling up across western areas, and further showers or perhaps longer spells of rain. And again, they could be heavy and possibly thundery at times. Still, the best chance of drier and brighter conditions is across the southeast corner of the UK. And again, temperatures here just about climbing into the low 20s, given that sunshine. And there's really no significant change as we head into the early part of next week, certainly staying on the changeable side with further showers, which will be heavy at times, but occasional bright or sunny spells too.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 9:23. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Got to say hello to Tracy this morning. Tracy is in bed, day 3 of COVID, which has knocked me for 6, she says. A hello from you and Anne would really cheer me up.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Hope you feel better soon.
Yeah, a very good friend of mine's just caught COVID and it's knocked her for 6 too.
1 in 35 people now in the UK,
yeah.
they say, but obviously most people
some people don't get any symptoms at all,
No.
and others do get knocked out like a really bad flu, I think, and hopefully no worse than that.
No. Look, it's a day to stay in because it's day 3 of the train strikes, of course. We say causing chaos. It's certainly causing a lot of travel disruption, whether it's the big delays or not, though. I think people are just staying inside at the moment, not heading out anywhere.
I think, yes, if you could possibly not travel, then that's what you're choosing to do. But earlier on, we joined our GB News London reporter, Alice Porter, in London, and there was nobody behind her. There was nobody about at all.
No.
8 o'clock on a Saturday morning in London, you would expect it to be pretty busy. It really wasn't.
Has it got any busier, Alice?
Hello there, good morning. Well, I'm surrounded by all the main tourist attractions. I've got HMS Belfast next to me, the Tower of London, further up the river we've got the London Eye, but I have to say it is very quiet at the moment. And I wanted to find out how these rail strikes are impacting people who are involved within the tourism sector. And I'm joined by Val Blackburn, who is one of the tour directors for Brit Movie Tours. So she does these fabulous tours, going around London, walking tours for people who are really interested in movies and want to see iconic movie locations. Now, Val, firstly, how has business been this week with all the rail strikes?
It has been difficult. We're still going, so that's a positive, but it's not helped.
OK, and just tell me, how does it work? Because you've obviously got guides who are out doing, I mean, you've got some fabulous locations, whether it's Paddington, James Bond, but I mean, how does it work if people can't come to one of the tours? I mean, how does that impact the guides themselves?
Well, if we don't have the customers, if the customers can't get to the tour can't run. And if the tour can't run, then people don't get work. So if we've got for a vehicle tour, for example, today, we were supposed to be doing a Gavin and Stacey tour over in Cardiff. Only people can't get there. So this, of course, has an expense when you have to put on a tour. So we had people cancel when it turned out they couldn't get there today, which meant that we then had to get in touch with the transport company and they had to lose their booking of the transport. The guide has to lose their job for the day. If they'd known, they could potentially have booked something else to do. It's just another thing that we're facing.
So the tour guides lose money through this, and then what's the kind of knock-on impact in terms of, I mean, we're all still trying to get out of COVID. I mean, presumably you've got a backlog of customers who weren't able to make their tours during lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have people who are booking their holidays in 2019, they'd have booked something for 2020, so they'd have booked their flights and their hotels. Let's go to see this show, let's go on this tour. So the money for that was received in 2019, and they were supposed to do it in 2020, but they couldn't. And then finally this summer, they're back. And now this happens. So some people are still rescheduling and rebooking. So the tours don't all have fresh new customers in. We're still working on the backlog. So we really need as many tours to go out as possible in order to try and get back on track.
And how are you having to sort of pivot as a company? Because I know you offer private tours of London and in sort of black cabs, so you can kind of go around not just London but other parts of the country as well for different tours. I mean, presumably they're quite popular today because they're not impacted by the train strikes.
Yeah, this week we've really seen a difference in that. So don't just love that can-do attitude of we can't get there any other way, we want to do this, you're all psyched up to do it, let's find a way. And the black taxis provide that. And of course it's lovely because you get your own private guide, you've got your own taxi, and you get literally taxied around.
Okay, so that's good news. But I mean, as we were saying earlier, I mean, these strikes haven't been resolved yet. I mean, we've got further news of sort of BA strikes. I mean, sort of looking ahead, does that make it quite difficult for your business?
It really does, because people are nervous about booking because they don't know if they're going to potentially be able to do it. They might book it thinking, oh, we'll cancel at the last minute, but that of course means that we think that we're going to be able to do tours and give people work, and then at the last minute people go, nope, not coming, and you go, okay, and you have to cancel that. And of course, if the guides had known this, they might have booked a scooter tour that day or said, no, I will guide in a museum that day. They'd have picked something else to do. So it's, as a company, we obviously lose the revenue from the tour, and the guides, they lose the work, and the transport companies, they lose the gig, and it's a knock-on effect.
Now, before you go, just a quick question. We're obviously standing at the most brilliant location right in the centre of London. Point to me to one area that has been used in a film where we can see, so people can see it on one of your tours.
Oh, well, it's got to be the bridge, hasn't it?
Tower Bridge. Which films have we seen Tower Bridge in? I mean, I'm thinking Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible. Yeah, they filmed just down here in front of the tower. One of my favourites, The Muppets. The Muppets came here. Thousands of fans tried to see Kermit as he was like James Bond breaking into the tower. We saw it years ago in The Mummy 2 when the bridge opened up in order to stop the getaway. Paddington 2, running across the top of the bridge. You also have in Paddington 2, the Shard.
There you go. Well, look, thank you so much, Val, for joining me. There you go. A few of the wonderful locations that we've seen in London in the movies. But sadly, as we're hearing from Val there, there's obviously been a huge impact on tourism in London because of these rail strikes.
OK. Alice, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, it's very remarkably quiet. Actually,
very.
I hope the roads are quiet driving home for me then. Being absolutely selfish.
Yeah, I wonder. They should be going out of London, shouldn't they?
Should be.
And people might be wanting to come into London at some point, but maybe not. It looked so quiet behind them, didn't it?
We shall see. Well, meanwhile, perhaps we should all just go and get our kilts on.
Yes, because from London, we're going to Edinburgh for the Royal Highland Show in just a couple of moments.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
GB views are so important because you come up with just really good points. Sally's been in touch, and do you know what, Sally? You're spot on the money. She says, I don't think by-elections are the greatest indicator of the electorate's mood. I think all the media are pretty much guessing until the general election takes place, and then no one has a clue what's happening. That is absolutely right.
Sort of does happen.
Yeah, absolutely right. Who knows what's going to happen in general
And
election?
we speak all the time to various commentators and people who are able to read how the politics are going, and it can be either way, can't it? You can that they can be both as expert and have completely different views on how things are going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what must be so difficult about it. If you're a Prime Minister, do you call a snap general election now or in 6 months' time or in a year's time? How do you read the mood and how do you know you got it right?
Yeah.
The whole career depends on it too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Never mind the country.
Now, if you want to cheer yourself up, what about a spot of sheep shearing or watching the Duck Commandos or perhaps tossing a caber?
Oh, yes. Luckily for you, our Scotland correspondent, Davy Donaldson, has the answer for you. Hello there, Davy.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Yeah. All right, tell us where you are, Davy.
Tell us where you are and what's going on.
Sorry. Yeah, it's pretty busy. As you can see, I've got the show jumping here going on at the moment over my shoulder. So this is the breakfast stakes, which is taking place. We've had maybe about 10 horses out. I have to say, unfortunately, one a couple of runs back, refused a couple of fences. But yeah, it's really good. Great day at Ingliston. The sun has been out. Sadly, it's gone behind the cloud now. But yeah, plenty of stalls here for everyone. There's lots of places to eat. There's lots of things to buy, saddles, country wear. You can imagine all the sort of things we've got here, and people really having a good day. One problem, of course, this year is the fact that you couldn't buy tickets at the gate as previously as you could, so a lot of people slightly disgruntled about that they can't get the tickets. You had to book them in advance, and surprise, surprise, sold out Saturday and Sunday, given the show's not been on for some time, and also it's the 200th anniversary of the Royal Highland Show. That really won't come as a huge shock to many, but yeah, really nice day here. Later on I'm going to be in the cattle hall. I'm going to have a look down there and see what's going on there. I've just had a quick scan past it earlier on, lots of cows and bulls, and then we've got the sheep pen. So really people coming from far and wide as well, people from all over Scotland and Ireland as well, and down from England, up from England rather, to come here and enjoy the show, and it's been absolutely fantastic. This is the third day of the 4-day show, so thousands and thousands of people going through the gates. I have to say the parking's a little bit chaotic because I had to get parked miles away from here, almost a different postcode, but yeah, eventually I'll get back to my car. But yeah, really nice day. We've got plenty coming up later on. We've got the Show Novice Championships in the ring behind me. I think that'll be pretty good, and later on the Grand Prix at 4 o'clock. So yeah, something for everyone really to have a look at and just enjoy the day.
Yeah, when's the caber tossing? It's my favourite thing.
No, there'll be none of that here. This is the Royal Highland Show, not the Highland Games, not to be confused. So no caber tossing at this one, but the Highland Games are taking place next month up in Inverness. So that's where the caber tossing will be, and I'll be at that. So we will get caber tossing, just not at this show.
Oh, that's
good.
A shame.
Yeah, it's true. It's a different sort of thing, isn't it? Because it's always in the Highlands. It's always surrounded by lots and lots of trees and everything. And the Queen and Prince Charles have often gone to see the caber tossing and everything. That's what you were looking forward to.
Yeah, I was looking forward to that. Never mind, Davey. We'll settle for a bit of sheep shearing. That'll do nicely. Enjoy. We'll catch you later. I think he's struggling to hear a little bit there. Yes. I bet it's probably quite loud there with all the...
Yeah, with all the loudspeakers going and everything.
See, that old traditional... I'll tell you what it reminds me of.
It's the traditional Highland Games you're
Traditional
thinking,
Highland Games.
That's when the Queen and Prince Charles and Prince Philip used to wear kilts, all of them.
But also, you sort of get that, like Scots porridge oats.
Yes,
the old packet, and they've got the guy and they've got those.
What are those great things that they... Not the caber, because that's the long, like, telegraph pole.
A shot putting.
The huge, like a cannonball on their shoulder, and then they heave that as well. All sorts of amazing games go on at the Highland Games.
See, that sort of thing, I mean, so Scottish and therefore so British.
Very traditional.
I just love all of that sort of thing. Sit there and have a bowl of porridge and watch that.
I like it in Gloucestershire where they roll cheese down a hill.
Do you get to eat the cheese afterwards?
Oh, I don't know. But they're enormous cheeses, aren't they? And they
It's a
roll
waste
down
of
the hill.
cheese otherwise.
I think it's wonderful, these amazing British traditions that still go on because people bother to keep those traditions going.
Egg rolling at Easter.
Oh, yes, yeah. Hard-boiled.
Always used to do that, decorate an egg and then roll it down. Black Crag up in the lakes where we used to go for our egg rolling.
But you used to do it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we always went out as a family on Easter Sunday and we'd decorate the eggs the day before and then roll them down Black Crag. So you've got the furthest.
You must eat the cheese when it gets to the bottom of the hill. You can't waste a whole roll of cheese, can you? Enormous things.
Unless it's all gone off and that's why they roll them.
But cheese doesn't really, does it?
Might do after.
I've got a pyramid of cheese in my fridge.
Have you still not eaten that?
I'm scared to actually open it now. It was weeks and weeks ago when I first came here. We did a very special programme on cheese, do you remember? And there was this amazing cone of cheese that I took home because I was going to eat it that weekend and didn't. And it's still sitting in the fridge. Shall I bring it in tomorrow and show you? We could open it up and see what's inside.
Cheese, hopefully.
Well, hopefully, yeah. I mean, cheese doesn't go off, does it? Because it's cheese.
Well, no,
it just
does
gets more
eventually.
and more smelly.
Just eventually. Depends what sort of cheese it is.
It does, doesn't it?
But, cut it open, get it on a bit of toast. It was nice melted on toast. I had some of that melted.
I know you were telling me yesterday about...
Stilton on toast.
Which I was determined to have yesterday and never quite got round to it. But I'm going to wait today. Put it under the grill.
Yeah, just put it like cheese on toast, but with Stilton. Bit of black pepper on top. I tell you, it is heavenly.
I'm hungry now.
Even if you don't really like blue cheeses, it just softens the flavour.
Yeah. OK. Just on ordinary dry toast? Yeah. OK. Going to try it. Something to look forward to?
Yes. I'll tell you what else a lot of people will be looking forward to marking today is Armed Forces Day. It is that chance to recognise and pay tribute to Britain's serving men and women, veterans and their families.
More than 150 events are apparently taking place across the country today, including the national celebration, which is in Scarborough.
Now, earlier in the week, one community in Nottinghamshire cheered on troops based locally at a very special ceremony.
Our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, will tell you more.
Each step through Eastwood and the crowd calls out louder. The town's support for the British Army shown through strength in numbers. The parading troops, 170 Infrastructure Support Engineer Group, live here too, at nearby Chetwynd Barracks. The group's members served in Afghanistan and are serving elsewhere right now. Colonel Hatcher is its commander.
6-2, 6-3, 6-6 Works Group, alongside the group's headquarters and support squadron, are on parade here today, representing the 200 or so officers and soldiers who are currently deployed both in the UK and overseas in support of training operations and other defence activity.
In 2009, the troops were granted freedom of entry into Broxtowe Borough, a medieval tradition of trust and a huge civic honour, the perfect reason to parade during Armed Forces Week.
I'm so proud of them because we don't get the opportunity to connect with the public and where we live very frequently, so it's great to be able to do this. We did a parade a couple of weeks ago in Derby for the Queen's Jubilee, and then to do this in the middle of Armed Forces Week, it's been absolutely perfect.
Armed Forces Day and the wider week means that communities can celebrate the serving men, women and veterans that form the British Army, Navy and Air Force. But it's about their families too. Back in Eastwood, Sabina arrived early before the pavement packed out.
My husband and I have been together for 19 years, married for 15, and this is the very first time I'm ever going to see him march. So just trying to contain myself because I'm a little bit excited.
Well, it means everything, doesn't it, to see our soldiers. We don't see a lot of them in Eastwood, and I've got 3 sons and none of them are in uniform, and I desperately wanted them to be.
Broxtowe's MP Darren Henry served in the Air Force.
When you're serving, you're very aware that you're there to do your duty for your country. And 170 Engineer Group came back from Afghanistan last year, for example, so we're very proud of that. But what's important about a day like today is that you express your connectivity with the community.
For Councillor Rigilovic, leading his community means keeping it connected to the forces that share these streets.
they are able, therefore, to come out, show their support for the armed forces, for the job that they do in protecting our freedom, our culture and our heritage. We are immensely proud.
The war in Ukraine has shown Britain's armed forces still have strong ties internationally, but on Armed Forces Day, the connection isn't lost locally either. Will Hollis for GB News in the East Midlands.
Now, I just had a brainwave, and I can't say that very often.
No.
Our line to Stephanie at Glastonbury... Our line to Stephanie at Glastonbury has gone down a little bit. It's not very good quality. And I thought, well, can't Aidan... I mean, he'd quite happily talk for 20 minutes. But instead of just having Aidan on, and because we're talking about cheese on toast...
Yes.
I thought... TV celebrity chef Kevin Woodford is in the green room waiting to go on the next show. So why not drag him in the studio? So I did.
Yeah.
Morning.
Hello.
All the things I'll do for extra cash.
Oh, we never said I'd pay you any more.
No, I don't think you get that.
Right, OK.
Look, in terms of... Why is it we're obsessed with cheese on toast? What is it about cheese on toast that is so cooked cheese that is so nice?
I know. Do you know what it is? I think, from a food point of view, I think what we really love are things that embrace us. It's natural, easy. We don't have to go to a lot of trouble to make it. And it's comfort food. It just makes us feel good.
Well, I suppose because it's high fat, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Food. It makes you feel
no, you're right,
warm and lovely inside very, very quickly.
It does very, very quickly indeed. And you're right. I mean, vary it. So it's not just the cheddar. It can be brie, which is stunning with grapes. And, it's fantastic. Hot grapes and melting. Oh, stunning.
Hot grapes.
Seriously. But the grapes inside, you put the grapes, first of all, on the bread, and then the brie on top of that, and then let it go slowly.
Ooh.
And then a little bit of caramelised onion on the side.
Oh.
I mean,
how do chefs do it? The minute they start talking about what we would just think of as a slab of cheese and a bit of bread...
It just suddenly becomes...
You do things to it that suddenly make it an event.
That's the fun bit, Anne, really. That is the fun bit, it's sort of... But at the same time, I will often find myself... If I'm sat at home and there's a great Liverpool game on, then I haven't got a lot of time to muck about. So all I'm do is a few slices of cheddar cheese, a little bit of tomato, let it go on the bread, get it toasted, and that'll do me. I don't want to muck about with all.
So you wouldn't grate it then? You wouldn't grate it?
I don't grate it. No. I'll tell you why I don't grate it, because if you grate the cheese, what happens is it becomes very thin, and I want the cheese to be substantial. So if you're going to have cheese and tomato on toast, you want cheese and tomato on toast. You don't want toast with a little bit of cheese.
Do you let the cheese brown? Because I quite like it when it's a bit brown.
A few brown bubbles on the top.
Yeah. It caramelises. That's the natural sugar coming through, and that really makes it good. For me, the perfect cheese on... I can't believe we're having this conversation.
No, I can't.
Cheese always lends itself to a mature discussion, doesn't it?
You didn't even have warning for that.
It's not even on autocue. That's very good. That's really good. So, you get that caramelising on the top, and then you've got to break through that. And that's why it wants to be a thick piece of cheese. Because
you've got to break through.
You've got to break through, and there's got to be that melted cheese underneath.
Any thoughts on your ideal bread? Do you go with it? We're talking about a big hunk of...
I hate sourdough bread.
Do you?
Oh, God, I hate it.
Bit dense. It's quite dense, isn't it?
It's too dense, and I can taste that vinegar going through it, and I just don't like that at all. So I like it's got to be a chunky piece of bread, and even chunkier piece of cheese to make it work.
Yeah. Now, hang on. Do you toast the toast first?
I do one side, and then...
So which side? So the side you've toasted is not the side you're going to put the cheese on?
No,
Correct. That's the right way to do it. The problem is, if you toast both sides, right?
It burns.
Yeah, it's too hard. You've lost all the flavour. You want the flavour of the bread to come through.
So hang on, you've taken a nice slice of bread, and then you don't toast anything.
You toast the bottom.
You toast the bottom.
Toast one side of it.
Yeah. And then you put the cheese on top.
No, then you turn it over.
Yep.
So you do the untoasted side with the cheese on.
Yeah.
Untoasted with the
cheese on. It's fabulous that way. You can build it up from that. You know what I mean? You can really go wild with the whole thing. It's
probably how pizza started, isn't it?
Do you know what it is? I mean, most of the dishes that we love have come from very, very poor beginnings. It's the people that didn't have a lot of cash.
Bread, cheese and tomatoes.
Correct. Absolutely. Correct. The great Mediterranean diet. And it's people that didn't have a lot of brass, a lot of money, and what they were looking for was protein, they were looking for, nutrition. So they were the ingredients that they could afford. And what's the best way of doing them? To get a composed dish so that those things come together. And it's like the tomatoes, the tomatoes. Once those tomatoes really go nice and hot. They caramelise it all because of the natural sugar. It's the caramelisation in the cheese and the tomatoes that makes it stunning.
Now, I've got to say, because you've been... I mean, I remember watching you, Kevin, I hate to say it, when I was at, like, sixth form college and all that. Can't cook, yeah.
The beginning of my career as well.
But I tell you what, there's been this huge uptake in people watching TV cookery programmes and trying it at home. And I happen to know that Mr. McGee here is quite a good cook and tries a lot of things. But you've inspired a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it was, there was a period, wasn't there, where cookery programmes before Keith Floyd and, people like that. Delia was around and she did a great thing. Delia did a great thing. But she was referred to by one of my colleagues as the Volvo of cookery shows.
Volvo, yeah.
As in,
slow and boring.
Yes. Thank you, Anne. I didn't have to say that.
But terribly expensive.
Yeah. But, but she did a great thing because she was solid. But along came a group of cooks. I love the word cook because it's English. Along came a group of cooks who were a bit edgy, wanted a bit of fun with it, just didn't want to sort of talk about boiling an egg for 20 minutes. They wanted to make it a bit exciting. And I think that led on to a lot of the shows like Ready, Steady, Cook, Can't Cook, Won't Cook, all of those shows, which inspired a new generation of people. People who wouldn't normally watch a cookery show because they thought it was boring, suddenly wanted to see it because there was a bit of fun going on. There was mistakes being made and there was gags happening and singing and dancing. And it suddenly became entertainment. So it was rock and roll in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, in the States, you had Julia Childs, who was terrifying. And, of course, here you had Fanny Craddock.
Oh, she was terrifying.
I had Fanny Craddock on TVAM quite a few times.
Did you?
She and Johnny used to come in and they used to cook up a storm and everything. She was terrifying.
She was, she was.
I would have thought she would have put an awful lot of people off cookery, except that she had a bit of personality, a bit like Julia Childs.
Very much so. I filmed with Julia when I worked for This Morning many, many years ago when we went out to New York and I filmed
and
with
you
her
met
there.
Julia Childs?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I found her quite sort of, terrifying, really.
Yes.
Very clever.
Fanny Craddock.
I remember a cookery segment on Why Don't You? Do you remember a programme called Why Don't You?
Oh, I remember Why Don't You?
Yeah, that was the first time as a child I was introduced to kind of cooking. I didn't follow it up for another 30-odd years, but...
Now you're a soup. You're a soup.
I've only got one dish. I've only got chestnut soup. Celeriac and pear.
Chestnut soup?
Yeah, I did celeriac and pear the other week as well.
Soup?
That was pretty good.
I love soup. Soup's
Yeah.
great.
But
And
soup's
very nice with
underrated.
cheese on toast.
Beautiful. Oh, perfect combination.
You're talking about the perfect meal there.
Perfect combination.
Yeah.
It should be simple.
What do you cook, Stephen?
Because I'm vegetarian.
Are you?
So I do quite a lot of veggies, but it's amazing now without these fake, the minces and the pieces and all the things that you can actually make sort of proper meals with. But my sort of best thing I do is like a lasagna or a cannelloni and cook it the night before and just leave it for overnight.
Improves every time.
Yeah.
I'm a great admirer of anybody who's vegetarian because I find it really difficult. And I got into serious trouble on Ready, Steady, Cook because we had a woman came in with a bag of vegetarian ingredients. And the ingredients were spilled out. It was the days of Fern Britton.
Yeah.
And Fern said to me, what would you do for a vegetarian? And I said I'd gather them all together and send them to France. No, but I don't understand vegetarian cookery. I find it so hard, Stephen. It's really not easy to get the flavours into it,
But you get to... I was in Italy recently, went to a vegetarian restaurant, actually, and the food was sensational. It was like quite a high-end vegetarian restaurant, and it was amazing. So it's come on in leaps and bounds, I think. Kevin, thank you.
My pleasure.
You've saved our bacon.
My pleasure.
Just on a cheese and toast, I just like a little bit of Liam Perrins on mine. That's all. Simple. Yeah.
No, you are good. I'm impressed.
That's not vegetarian.
No, it's not. I know.
No, it's got anchovies in it.
Is that right?
Yeah, in Liam Perrins, yeah. But there you go.
Chestnut soup hasn't.
No. Look, we'll see you at 10 with Esther and Phil.
Yeah,
Kevin,
great.
thank you very much
My pleasure.
indeed. I've been trying to get on TV with him for years. We've been chatting for years, never actually managed.
Oh, no, I want to ask him first of all about pizza. Sorry,
Oh,
because it's my thing about pizza. Do you make pizza yourself?
Yeah.
From beginning?
Yeah.
Can you twirl it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's half the fun. Absolutely.
Consider yourself booked for an
Done.
Because you're going to teach Stephen and I how to twirl a pizza base.
Easy.
Yeah?
I'm bringing a little pizza oven so we can eat it afterwards.
I think we've got a big enough table here to be able to...
We can do it.
Anything to get a free meal. Well, it is. Kevin, thank you. Aidan, let's talk whatever this is. Johnny Bairstow, cricket is the word I'm
That's
looking
right.
for.
I was told this role might take me into different areas of life. I'm pleased to be discussing food this morning as well as sport.
Yeah.
Exactly. But no, listen, good knock yesterday by Johnny Bairstow. England have been quite a turgid watch over the last probably 10 years, actually, when they've been on road in Test cricket. So they'd already won this series against New Zealand. I suppose you could say the pressure was off, and so it's easy to go out and entertain when you know you've already won the match, but they had already done the hard work. Back pages of the Daily Mail today, it's brilliant barnstorming Bairstow and Super Johnny putting bums on seats. So he got 130 not out yesterday, alongside Jamie Overton, who got 89. Now, they've been set a run chase of 329, so to come out and produce a performance like that, it was exceptional by him, but it also leads maybe England Open to the fact that they needed an exceptional batting performance to bail them out of problems again, much like they had around Joe Root. Obviously, he was beset with problems with his captaincy. So I'm hoping it will see us into a new era, but as I say, there's a little bit more work to do. Yeah, they trail by 65 runs, and the play resumes today at 11 o'clock at Headingley. I think we're not far off that now, about an hour away.
Yeah. Money. We're talking money last time, because you seem to think that, what is it, £45 million is peanuts.
Well, it is actually. When your money comes out of a hole in the ground in the Middle East and you're bankrolled by estates, by the Abu Dhabi group, then, yeah, £45 million is mere pocket change. I mean, £45 million for him. They paid 51 for Erling Haaland.
Calvin Phillips, isn't it?
I would have Calvin Phillips. Yes, I would have valued if you were to say to me 6 weeks ago they're going to sign Erling Haaland and Calvin Phillips this summer, I'm going to say that's going to cost them 200. They've got them for less than 100 here. I'd also say, however, there is a lot of wages to pay, but it doesn't really matter to Manchester City. They're absolutely awash with cash. The reason it's cheap, I think, my understanding was that the deal was done while Leeds thought they were going to get relegated. So they didn't want to leave themselves high and dry by having to take a reduced amount for a player. I think there may have been a clause in his contract that said he went for even less than that if the team were relegated. So they did this about a month ago, I believe, and that's why City have probably got him for... I mean, it's 42 plus £3 million in add-ons. I still think they've got him for at least £10 million less than his valuation. But there's a medical to be taking place next week. His injury record of late has not been fantastic, and he'll be on about £120,000 a week.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. I'll tell you who's not getting any money per week now, Wayne Rooney. Well,
no, that's right.
He's left Derby County 12 months early.
Well, yes, he has, but again, it'll be these contracts are loaded with clauses that we don't know about. So he could have been exercising that. They don't have any owners at the moment. They've been loaned out yesterday. They had a loan yesterday. They've been beset by financial problems, I should say, as well. We've touched on the show a few times in the past. A local property owner has loaned them some money to tide them over. He's also bought the stadium yesterday, this guy. So he will buy the club, we expect. But I think Rooney's looking at it and thinking, look, I did a good job last year. It was 21-point deduction. If I had the 21 points extra added on, then I would have got them up to probably about mid-table. You've also got to deal with all the negativity around the club, and this is not just for a few weeks. It's been going on since last summer.
Yeah, that must be stressful.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine managing any situation there when you're fearing for your existence. So I think he's come away from it knowing that they've got a tough start. They've got 5 players contracted on their entire squad, and their season kicks off on July the 30th against Oxford United. So they've got to get players in the door, and he's probably looking at it and thinking, look, if I step back now, then when the managers start getting sacked at the start of next season, by about October, he might be in a good position to go and take a job. Of course, we all know who Wayne Rooney is. He's a huge name. He's made a good start in management. He's still very young. Management, you can only be 2 jobs away from having your career finished in management at the age of 38. So I think he's picking his fights sparingly, and I don't think in a few months...
Standing back, then, at the moment, waiting.
I think he's being quite prudent, yeah, I do.
Oh, well, fair dues.
You should advise Boris Johnson, shouldn't you, really?
I know,
yeah. And Aidan, thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Kevin Woodford, thank you especially. But you can stay in that seat now till the next show, because you're going to be back at 10 o'clock. That is it from us. But stay tuned, because Esther and Philip are here next with your Saturday selection.
Good morning, I'm Helen Roberts with your weather update, and this weekend is looking rather changeable, certainly in comparison with some recent days over the past week or so, and it's all thanks to this area of low pressure, very slow moving, and it's with us right the way through the course of this weekend. Initially introducing this cold front, which will actually bring some better nights if you've been struggling to sleep with the humidity over recent nights, feeling a little bit cooler and fresher than it has done. So for Saturday, we start on quite a bright note, but quickly these rash of showers developing, particularly across western parts of the country. Some of those will be heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. The best chance of seeing drier and brighter weather throughout the day is across East Anglia and the southeast of England, and this is also where we'll tend to get the higher temperatures into the low 20s, so feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine. But it is looking changeable, and there's yet more cloud and rain swinging in from the west through the course of tonight and into the start of Sunday. This will be a band of slightly more persistent rain as we head into the early hours of Sunday morning. As I mentioned, feeling a little bit fresher than it has done over some recent nights, but still not cool by any stretch. So we start Sunday again with some bright spells, particularly across the eastern side of the UK, but quite a lot of cloud already piling up across western areas and further showers or perhaps longer spells of rain. And again, they could be heavy and possibly thundery at times. Still, the best chance of drier and brighter conditions is across the southeast corner of the UK. And again, temperatures here just about climbing into the low 20s, given that sunshine. And there's really no significant change as we head into the early part of next week, certainly staying on the changeable side with further